We ready to go, Cindy?
I am, thank you.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so we'll go ahead and call to order the Sacramento Regional Transit District Board meeting for Monday, February 27th, 2017. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Director Budge? Director Hansen?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings? Director Kennedy?
Here.
Director Miller? Director Natoli? Director Chenier? Director Cerna?
Here.
Director Morin,
Here.
or excuse me, Chair Morin. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and will be streamed live on RT's website. Today's meeting will air on Wednesday, March 1 at 9 a.m. and replayed on Thursday, March 2 at 6 p.m. on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Would everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item.
Public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Okay, I do have a few members requesting to speak on matters not on the agenda, and we'll start out with Brenda Anderson. Brenda?
Give a microphone to her.
Okay,
Chair.
very good. So while we're handling that, after Brenda will be Ellen Johnson, and then after Ellen will be Jeffrey Tardigia.
Here you go, Ms. Anderson.
Hi, my name is Brenda Anderson. I am a private advocate for the disabled and elderly in facilities and transportation. I would like to say that I've been attending the Area Council of Governments, and I've listened to some of the regional transit changes and innovations, and I just want to applaud it. I just give great appreciation as a transportation user for all that you've done. Thank you very much.
All right, Brenda, thank you very much. And if you need more time, you have 3 minutes. So if you want to compliment us for a little more.
Oh, he's giving it back to her.
So Ellen, where is Ellen? I got Ellen Johnson?
Yeah, I am.
There we go.
Yes.
Here comes the microphone.
Oh, it's about my note. It's about my note.
Okay.
Yeah, I was concerned about the benches on Broadway and Martin Luther King. They're tearing down all the benches, and I'm kind of concerned about it. Why? Do you guys find out why?
Do we want to comment on that briefly now or just get back to?
I can answer that.
Okay, thanks.
We were having some challenges with the benches around that intersection. We had a lot of...
Down Broadway from Martin Luther King down to the food source store.
Yeah, so we had a bunch of people that were sleeping on the benches, and we had chronic people that were refusing some of the outsourced resources that we were offering, and so we temporarily removed them to try to change that behavior. But there was no long-term plans to keep them off. It was just temporary.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not only people sleeping on the bench, because I live right on Broadway in that senior citizen apartment on Broadway, and this started again. The guys that do the work around here, they came and fixed them. Now they turn around and the back is off again. The one that off of Broadway and Martin Luther King, they had it in the street.
What I'll do is I'll have our officers reassess it and kind of see if the problem's moved.
Do it? They keep knocking them down.
Right.
You guys should just take the back off and let them sit on the bench.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Norm. And
But thank you. You thank you because of the advertising they put on the benches.
Yeah, so it's a
It's
combination.
not only that there's one sleeping on the benches, because
Right.
I live on Broadway.
So what we have is a combination of both homeless people that are using the benches, but then we also have a lot of
Other people.
drinking and hanging out around the benches, which
No,
is,
no, 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 not on Broadway. Now, don't make no excuses.
you know,
There's no hanging out on Broadway. I live on Broadway, and I catch the 51 all the time.
well, we'll reassess all the benches and kind of see where we can put them back again and see where we're
old
at.
thing.
Okay, so,
Same old thing again.
so,
I'm scared to even go out there wait for the bus, because I'm afraid somebody might come by and shoot.
all right,
Because it's meanness going on. And I can't understand why people are tearing down the benches.
oh, yeah, so Director Jennings would like to make a comment here.
Okay, thank you. Wait a minute. How you want to say something?
Yeah, just real quick, because you sent me a note and I appreciate it, and you've talked to me one-on-one. So I will work with the officer to reassess the situation, see what we can do in order to change it, and then I'll communicate with you directly, okay?
Okay, yeah, because the guys come in and do the benches, and they turn around. They just turn one down before they end.
Got it. I got you.
Weekend.
And I'll get back to you directly. I'll make sure I get an answer to you.
You will call me.
And you can spank me if I don't. Thank you. I know. I got you.
Great, and thanks, Rick, for stepping in. So Jeffrey, where's Jeffrey at? Jeffrey's over here.
Board, I have looked at your PowerPoint presentation, quite impressed. At the same time, I will emphasize, when is the Connect card going to have some form of refund policy? And I have for 3 months tried to get drivers to offer me a discounted day pass. I have only succeeded once in 3 months. I tried twice today, and again, our drivers do not know how to offer a discounted day pass for the cash card. The monthly cycle is working well, but for a cash card, you have 2 serious problems, and as far as I know, you've yet to get the scanners in to determine on your light rail for your transit officers of how validating using the Connect card. There's only, less than 300 of us out there testing, but the biggest thing I hear is drivers don't see it enough, and they do not know how to do the process.
Great, thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks for that field input there. Next on business from the floor is Joan Barden. Where is Joan?
She's right here. We're bringing.
Oh, all right, we got a mic coming your way.
Good morning, everyone. I am Joan Barden, raised in Sacramento and living just a couple blocks away from MLK and Broadway. And I wish to say that the Oak Park Neighborhood Association will be aware of this, and we will support all that we can possibly do to have safe benches in Oak Park. And I really feel upset that the whole idea of a homeless person sleeping on a bench at midnight should be forced to sleep on the sidewalk. We have to solve the problem of homelessness, and that is something that the city is working very hard to do. But I do think that we need safe benches, covered if possible to keep us out of the rain. And I do think that it would be an idea for regional transit to consider having the cameras installed nearby to watch any negative behavior that can go to the authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thanks for coming out this morning. Okay, that completes items for not on the agenda. So next item, please.
Next, and the only item, is the workshop on the strategic vision. Henry Lee will begin.
Okay, and I'll just introduce a little bit here. So as we all know up here on the board, and probably many out there in the community, this has been a work in progress for many months. You'll see probably about 50 slides, I think, in this presentation. And this has been refined over time amongst staff. Staff has poured over this stuff. All of us on the board have seen this draft. But I want to emphasize it's a draft. This is not done, and that's why we're doing this meeting, and that's why you're here today. So we welcome any input you have after the presentation. And again, this will go into quite a bit of detail. I promised Henry he has 10 minutes this morning to get through this. So, but no, we'll take all the time we need. And with that, I'll introduce our General Manager, Henry Lee, and I believe he'll start out just introducing a few special guests here today. Take it away, Henry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and the public. I'd like to first thank some of RT's partners from community organizations, news media, business, and governmental sister agencies for attending today's meeting. Among them, a special guest from DC, SACOG incoming CEO, Mr. James Corliss, along with SACOG interim CEO, Mr. Kirk Trust. Welcome. I would like to first invite James to just speak for a couple words. Yes.
Well, thanks, Henry. I promise to take 9 of your 10 minutes, so you're all set. Director Morin and the board, just want to say hello, warm greetings. As Henry mentioned, I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'll be here in April, taking over the reins and filling the shoes of Mike McKeever at SACOG as the incoming CEO. Currently, I do know Sacramento, though I have never lived there, but I reside in D.C. and run a group called Transportation for America, and we've been very familiar with the good work here in the Sacramento region. We work at the federal level, the state level, the local level, trying to improve transportation of communities of all sizes. And one message I just want to pass along to you, and I know you were going to think that I was going to have great, really good news from Washington, D.C. I don't. And I think this really is about the challenge that you all have ahead here with this meeting today and the next year and the next 5 years ahead. There's a lot of talk about $1 trillion for infrastructure. In many ways, those of us in transportation are thrilled to hear transportation and infrastructure being mentioned as much as it is. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't work on a new package for flood control and levees and dams and improvements, because we sorely need those things as a region, as a state, and as a nation. But frankly, far likely in the next 12 months will be cuts at the federal level. We're going to hear from the president tomorrow night. We're going to see what they call a skinny budget coming out, which will actually set out the overarching kind of summary for how the federal agencies are going to be sort of arranged and how much funding goes to each one of them. And I will tell you, one of the biggest areas that we are most concerned about is in passenger rail and public transportation. So it's the best of times and it's the worst of times for transportation. We hear about $1 trillion, but frankly, I think we have to guard against serious cuts coming down the pike that could be even implemented this year. They have a continuing resolution until April the 28th. And so all of your visits back to DC, but educating your entire congressional delegation back here at home in Sacramento, I think is going to be essential, because that federal funding, as you know, is a core part, it makes up a core part of your budget, and those projects that are so vital, big and small, to the functionings of RT and to your future. So I wish I had better news from DC. I will be here in April. I'm thrilled to be moving to this region and joining and partnering with the likes of the board. I think the work you're undertaking in this vision is essential, because I think public transportation itself in the next 3 to 5 years is going to undergo a radical transformation, and we as Sacramento have to be on the cutting edge of that. So again, thank you for the time, Henry. Thanks for the introduction.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. Well, a little over 2 years ago, then the RT board chair, Serna, formed a board task force with a dozen of community leaders to challenge RT to become more safe, clean, and convenient. From that moment, RT started an extensive, bold, and aggressive journey to turn around a financially constrained and image-battered public agency. Soon, Director Chenier assumed the board chair position, he expanded the scope of this turnaround effort and spent enormous time to further guide the transformation process. Early last year, with a determined new leadership team on board, a group of over 1,000 highly motivated RT employees and strong support from the entire community, I mean that, entire community, we conducted comprehensive preparations for Golden One Center opening and exceeded the expectation from the Sacramento community. While Golden One Center's success may be a great story that community talked about most, we have done much more in terms of making significant cultural change and relentlessly optimizing RT's business practices to bring our financial house in order. In last 8 months, we built up a cash reserve from $0 to $6 million with a fiscal year end goal of $9 million. We have made profound system-wide improvement and especially achieved tremendous progresses in safety, cleanliness, partnership building, regaining community trust, and staff development. However, despite great success, we are facing some huge challenges ahead. Most importantly are 3. First, the rapid advanced technology in transportation, such as autonomous vehicles, will fundamentally disrupt our way of mobility and way of life. And we need to act now to embrace these unbelievable challenges. One of the most talked about solutions is to add many more bus feeder routes to nearby light rail stations. Some buses may be on-demand and flexible buses, so we can better serve the community, grow the economy, mitigate the congestion, and enhance air quality. Second, our local investment in public transportation is way below the minimum requirement to make this region an economically viable region. Compared to our peer regions, such as San Diego and Portland, we are 3 to 6 times underfunded from local investment. For instance, RT receives less than 1/6 of 1 penny from the local sales tax, but the Portland Transit Agency receives 3/4 of 1 penny, 4.5 times more than RT. And San Diego MTS receives half penny, 3 times more than RT. As a result of that, both agencies have 3 to 4 times more light rail feeder buses than RT has, even though the populations are only 30 to 40% more than Sacramento. When citizens in Sacramento feel that they do not have enough bus routes to take them where they want to go, we need at least double our bus fleet to make that happen. When they are not happy with waiting too long for buses or light rail trains to come and want to increase the schedule frequency from 30 minutes to 15 or even 10 or 7 minutes, like BART and Muni in San Francisco, we need to at least have additional 1/3 of 1 penny sales tax funding to make that happen. And thirdly, as James just mentioned, the uncertainty of Trump administration's position on future federal funding. As you know, that 10 days ago, federal government delayed the decision of grant funding for the $647 million Caltrain's electrification project for high-speed rail and Bay Area commute rail. Even though the project was recommended by Federal Transit Administration, called FTA, and had completed the 30-day Capitol Hill review. And this is the first time in recent history this has ever occurred. On the screen are some pictures of congestions in some major corridors, which are getting worse and worse every day. Nationwide, we all recognize that wherever public transportation goes, economy grows and the community thrives. While our regional leaders currently are working hard and optimistically promoting to make Sacramento region a first-class region in the nation, we first need a robust public transportation network. Our local transit investment has been behind at least 15 to 20 years compared to other first-class regions or cities such as San Diego and Portland. It is time now for us to act if we are really serious about making Sacramento great. Thanks to Chair Moran and the immediate past Chair Chenier, 3 months ago, right after November 8, 2016 election, we start to prepare for today's Strategic Vision Board workshop to discuss how to move this agency forward. Today, we will first review our transition vision, then briefly go through what we have done so far and the challenges ahead. After that, we will talk about what we plan to do in the next 2 years. Each of our executive staff will talk about the initiatives they will be responsible in the next 2 years. We believe we can implement the first 12 initiatives within our current financial constraints. We also will propose other 4 initiatives which will need community to invest in itself to move this region forward. By implementing the first 12 initiatives, we will eliminate RT's $10 million long-term operating deficit, maintain the current service level and the fare structure in the next 2 years, and further build trust in the region in our ability to operate the best we can with what we have, and to show folks we are going to be diligent stewards of whatever budget we have. Furthermore, with a potentially 1/3 of 1 penny additional local investment, we will build a viable, sustainable, and high-performing transit agency and double our ridership from 25 million to 50 million a year by becoming a commuting choice for many people who have the option to drive. So quickly, if we look at our Transition Vision Board approved 8 months ago, we were focusing on customers, partnerships, financials, organizational excellency, and staff development. And in last 8 months, we spent enormous of time to fulfill these 5 goals, to create a customer-first culture and to run RT more like an effective business enterprise. In order to prove to the region that RT has what it takes to provide quality service, we first focused on the system-wide improvement. Our slogan has been clean, safe, and convenient. We have made major cleaning enhancement to vehicles and stations. We hired 25 transit agents, resulting in a significant improvement in safety and a decrease in fare evasion. we reduced our evasion rate from more than 15% in the past to less than 5% now. Our fare revenue increased in the first 6 months. The increase is about 18.5%.
Henry, did that guy have his fare?
And we made improvement to light rail stations that has not been upgraded in 30 years. And we regularly and proactively address customers' concerns within 2 hours. I literally mean that, within 2 hours, which changed RT's image from a governmental bureaucracy to a customer's first service service organization. Please take a look at the light rail wraps on the screen. This 3-wrapped car train symbolizes how RT was able to quickly change our business process. We have been trying for the past 10 years to improve the look of our system. Now we have got this done within a couple months, and our fleets and stations are looking cleaner and better. As a result of this, we actually also found a new source of revenue. Our Golden One Center. Our Golden One Center is Golden One Center service is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for RT to exceed customers' expectations and build ridership. We provide an exciting customer experience. 10% of Golden One Center attendees rode RT, which exceeds 7% ago, and 50% of the riders are new, which will become our regular riders in the future. And we have made extensive effort on partnership building. Please take a look at a short list of some partners we have worked very closely. We received the SACOG Salutes Award for regional collaboration. We have also completed a number of delayed projects with our partner cities, such as painting and cleanup of Rancho Cordova Sound Wall, the rehabbed Central Heights bus stops and shelters, and within the city of Sacramento, we worked together on many projects. One of those was moved 7 and K Street Light Rail Station to 7 and Capitol. First time we had a board meeting in Elk Grove, and the partnership grows stronger and stronger every week with local governments within RT's jurisdiction. And we have built excellent partnerships with federal and state funding agencies. For example, we successfully addressed Buy American compliance issue for Blue Line project and saved RT about $3 million. In 2013, as a result of Buy American compliance violation, FTA mandated RT to pay over $3 million from local funding back to FTA or federal government, or spent $5 more million to redo the job. And one of the toughest issues with the federal government is a Buy American compliance issue. From 2013 to 2016, we have had many tough and difficult negotiations to request FTA to reduce the payback amount, but we did not get anywhere. In September 2016, we scheduled a 15 to 30 minutes meet and greet meeting with the head of FTA and sent a comprehensive, well-prepared meeting package and the agenda in advance for FTA to review, hoping we can convince FTA to reduce the payback cost and support RT's strategic goals. While we stepped in the conference room, I found entire FTA executive team, 12 top executives were all there. The meeting was very successful, and the FTA was very supportive of RT's new direction. We not just received the strong support from FTA on major capital projects such as Light Rail Airport and Elk Grove extension for some double tracking, but also received verbal support to reduce the Buy American payback amount. As of today, FTA agreed to reduce the payback amount from over $3 million to only $73,000. The September meeting was the first time RT ever had a meeting with the entire FTA executive team, and also turned a 15 to 30 minutes meet and great meeting into a over an hour-long full scope of discussions on many key topics. Since then, we even further strengthened our partnership with FTA. We also formed seamless partnership with SACOG, Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, and STA. During May 2016 budget season, with a shortage of $2 million, RT faced a potential service cut. We turned to these two regional partners, SACOG and SMARC, the Air Quality Management District. We turned to these two regional partners for help. Within 2 weeks, they allocated $2 million operating fund to RT by using some very unconventional or innovative ways. Thanks to two wonderful leaders, then SACOG CEO Mike McKeever and Air Quality District CEO Larry Green. Later, with the help from the Air Quality District Board Chair, Director Hansen at that time. One of the reasons they did that for us, they helped us for us at that time. Mr. Green told us during that 2 weeks' time, the communications we had with both agencies, at least with the Air Quality District, that 2 weeks communication is more than last 5 years communication between Air Quality District and RT. Since then, the partnership was going on exceptionally well, and we also paid 45% of Measure B educational cost to STA, even though our share of Measure B is only 26%. So we made some sacrifice. We did a proactive and responsive media outreach, which resulted in very positive media coverage. And we worked closely with community advocacy groups. We have extensive, transparent, and honest communications with them. The transparency and timely communication have turned some of the strongest opponents or criticals of RT to enthusiastic supporters. 2 weeks ago, we had, we had a community group meeting with 11 community groups. One of those groups was Ion Sacramento, and the transportation chairman is here today. This is Mr. Boris's email to us, and from Ion Sacramento, they indicate they support a robust regional transit system, and they appreciate the transparency, and they want to, us to know they appreciate that, and the new direction for SAC-RT is very exciting for them, and the goal, is very important, and they want to work with us as a partner. Okay, let's see where's that. I wanted to specifically talk about another thing, which is we collaborate with ATO leadership recently, and we tentatively reached a fair and cost-effective contract extension, which will reduce the annual pay increase from current 4% to 2.5%. And this will save RT about $1.5 million. And still, we will be able to compensate our employees competitively. I want to specifically thank Mr. Rolf Nils, ATO president, for his strong leadership and collaboration. Don't know if he's here today. But I know, the Paratransit Inc. new CEO, Ms. Tiffany Fink, is here. We have worked with PI extensively in the last 6 months to seek better ways to enhance ADA service quality at an affordable cost. Thanks, Tiffany, for the collaboration. Very quickly, in the last 10 months, we successfully reversed unfavorable financial trend. As I mentioned earlier, we have built up $6 million cash reserve in last 8 to 10 months, in last 8 months, and with a goal, year-end goal, $9 million. We try to use this cash reserve to reduce our line of credit from $29 million to $20 million, which will save significant interest cost. In a relentless pursuit of organizational excellence on all fronts, we are eliminating silos and building partnerships internally across the organization. A first step in July 2016, we eliminated 25 management positions, which is a 10% of a cut, and add 44 frontline customer service employees position, which is a 5% increase. We conduct extensive business analysis before we make any important business decisions. We hold multiple town hall meetings and more frequently district-wide team meetings to promote transparency and inspire staff. And we pay special attention to performance management and hold ourselves accountable to further drive accountability and cultural change. There is a strong voice from elected leaders and citizens in this region to hold public agencies accountable. We have done a good job on that so far. And we significantly improved the district-wide staff's bench strength with successful Golden One Center service. Along with the board vision and the CEO performance goals, we were able to round out the executive management team with strong professionals who worked collaboratively to provide the highest quality service possible. We encourage and support staff to learn best industry practices from industry conferences and seminars. The first time we sent some staff to American Public Transportation Association's annual conference and California Transit Association's annual conferences. Even our financial condition is not ideal, but we needed to invest on our staff. Through the implementation of best practices, we developed a highly motivated and inspirational team willing to perform beyond and above all time. And in the meantime, we strive to retain and recruit top industry talent. In last month, we filled my previous position, hired Suzanne Chen, Ms. Suzanne Chen, as our VP of Administration. She came from a state government and worked for the multiple state agencies in last 25 years and last as a top executive or senior executive in the Department of Rehabilitation as a governor's appointees. And we also hired a seasoned transit expert from a transit agency called VIA in San Antonio in Texas. Over Carisco. She worked for AOA Metro and other transit agencies before, and she was the VP of Operations in VIA in San Antonio, and she managed over 1,600 staff directly. Welcome on board, both of you. And also, we're talking about the challenges ahead. In addition to the operational reliability, ridership growth, and the business optimization and the cultural transformation, the fourth challenge, physical challenge, it's something we need to support. The item A is something we will address in next 2 years. And B, C, D, and F is something we need to work with community to address in the future. And in our later on the presentation, we'll talk about that in detail. And the F is what James just talking about, the $35 million annual funding for potential federal defunding. That is very bad, path forward. We hope that we will not go that route eventually, because that $35 million means 28% of service, and we cannot have that. That's why part of the major reasons we have today's board workshop. And without further ado, I would like to start to ask staff come here to talk about 12 initiatives. First, I would like to bring our VP of Operations, Chief Operating Officer, Mark Lonergan, to talk about the first initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, and good morning. The first initiative that I would like to talk about this morning has to do with operator absenteeism and operator attendance. But let me start by saying that RT has a fantastic group of operators, men and women, who operate our buses and trains every day and do a great job. Nevertheless, we do have an attendance issue that we would like to work on some more. Improvements in RT's attendance control program was one of the major initiatives identified by RT's consultant, Doug Carter. And to put the problem into perspective, over the past 12 months, unscheduled operator absences have averaged about 2.2 days per month per operator. This equates to over 100,000 hours annually, or the equivalent of about 48 operators that are unavailable for work. Now, we all want our bus operator to be alert, and you would expect operators might not have the same level of attendance as your office staff, but it is an area that needs improvement. And just a minor improvement, a 10% improvement, would result in an additional 5 operators available for work annually, which equates to about $450,000, or improvements in service reliability. It is our intent to accomplish this in 2 ways. We do have an attendance control procedure, and it has had an effect. It has been effective, but it's also stale now and needs to be refreshed. So we're going to be making improvements in our attendance control internal procedures for managing the information and getting information to operators in a more timely way so that they know what their attendance is like, and streamlining other aspects of that program. We also have been working with the ATU, and the ATU has agreed to focus with management on an update to our attendance control policy and program to bring it in line with the current best practices in the transit industry today, and we will be doing that over the next few months. So now I would like to introduce Ms. Laura Ham, our Vice President of Accountability and Performance, to talk about our next initiative.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. Our second initiative is the route optimization study. RT's route structure was primarily designed 30 years ago with a mostly radial network focused on downtown Sacramento. Land uses, travel patterns, and economic centers such as employment and retail have grown and changed, while downtown now plays an important but less predominant role in the regional economy. We face a number of challenges to grow ridership. On-time performance and reliability have become a greater challenge as congestion has increased. Changes post-recession have continued to affect travel patterns, and our ridership losses since 2010 have been significant, with a loss of over 10 million annual boardings since the gas prices peaked in 2008. Transit has lost an average of 6% of its riders nationwide since the recession. RT's loss has been slightly higher due to service cuts and fare increases. The time is right for RT to engage the community and reimagine the system. Our service design should reflect the region as it stands today and as it is projected to grow. The purpose of the route optimization is to take a fresh look at the RT system from a blank slate or starting from scratch standpoint. We are viewing this project as a way to reintroduce RT to the community and our partners and place the customer experience at the center of the service design process. It's important that the community takes ownership of the choices we make for the transit system and feels they have buy-in regarding the service we envision for the future. This will help us to build support for growth of the system over time. We periodically study our ridership, but a goal of this effort is to have a true understanding of RT's different rider groups, including occasional riders, all-purpose, and commuters. One of our tasks is to secure grant funding to support the effort, including expanded community engagement, research, and any capital improvements that might be necessary as a result of the route restructuring, such as new bus stops. However, if we are unable to secure grant funding, we will continue the project on a more modest level in-house. We will evaluate what we can do with today's resources and consider modest growth for near-term implementation. Later on, I'll talk to you about how service and frequency might improve with additional local funding support for transit as we consider a more long-term effort to grow the system. So our third initiative is a review of ADA paratransit service. A thorough study of this service is consistent with a broader direction to examine customer service quality, better business models, fiscal sustainability, and productive partnerships. In non-labor costs, ADA paratransit service is one of our top 3 expenses. Paratransit service is also one of the fastest growing areas of RT's budget, with a contract cost of $16 million and a total cost of $19.3 million, or nearly $65 per trip. Based on our research and analysis of the cost and current contract, this service can be provided less expensively. The current structure provides little cost benefit to RT with efficiencies or economies of scale. Per the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the average demand response cost per trip for non-top 10 transit agencies is $28.94 per trip. On the screen, you'll see a timeline of RT's agreement with Paratransit Inc. for ADA paratransit service. RT most recently renegotiated the agreement with Paratransit in 2011, which includes a procurement year provision commencing on July 1st, 2017, and at every third year thereafter, under which RT has the right to competitively procure ADA complementary paratransit service by action of the RT board. We have been exploring a number of quality and productivity improvements with Paratransit Inc., ensuring regulatory compliance and opportunities to contain cost. Now that we have an opportunity to renegotiate the agreement, we will be discussing options regarding the payment methodology in the contract and working towards resolving any outstanding issues. The current model presents risk to its sustainability and our ability to maintain the same quality and level of service for passengers with disabilities using our accessible fixed route bus and light rail system and our ADA paratransit services. This procurement cycle presents an opportunity that we have not had in some time to explore ideas for how the service can improve. We will negotiate with Paratransit Inc. over the next 3 to 6 months and then report back to the board with a recommendation. So I'll hand it back to Mark Lonergan, our COO, to discuss IT modernization.
Thank you, Laura. So the next slide and our next initiative has to do with funded projects in our information technology area. And I'm not going to go through the whole list, but let me just pick on a couple of them. The first one I'd like to highlight is an upgrade to our mobile fare app. And as many of you know, we do have a mobile fare app that lets you buy certain fares today. We have actually contracted with a new vendor to provide a new app that has many more features and that will allow the mobile fare app to be used by many more people than can now based on how you buy your fare. The whole goal is to just improve the customer experience by making it easier to purchase your fare. The next project I'd like to highlight is the real-time train arrival information. We have it for buses currently. We've been struggling to get this in place for our light rail system, and we're probably a few months away now from being able to do that. We're actually installing the hardware on the trains right now, and we hope to have a functional system up by this summer. The last project I want to highlight is the public announcement system. And those of you who have gone to Golden One Center events and have boarded a train to go back at like 7th and Capitol or 7th and I have heard some of our station announcements for incoming trains. We are in the process of actually installing the necessary equipment to expand that to every light rail station. Ultimately, we'd like to tie it into the real-time train information, but in the short term, it'll allow us to augment our security program by being able to make announcements in stations, augment public information when we have service disruptions, again, by making announcements in stations, and we see just a variety of uses for this in the long term. So those are some upcoming IT projects. And now I would like to hand it over to Captain Norm Leong, RT's Vice President of Safety Security, to discuss the next initiative.
Good morning, Board. Let's see. In our efforts to provide better security on our system, we'll be focusing on several initiatives over the next couple of years, and I'll highlight a couple of them. The first will be to lower our fare evasion rate. We had an effort over the last couple of years that I've been assigned over at Regional Transit to do so, and we've had some success with the implementation of the transit agents, bringing it from 15% down to 5% evasion rate. We'll be expanding our fare paid zones system-wide. We'll bring that before the board this year in an effort to further lower the numbers by conducting more inspections at station platforms. We'll continue to monitor our progress by doing quarterly evasion studies that we conducted before we hired the transit agents as a baseline. Second major initiative is transition to a better business model for our presence at stations, which should complement our fare evasion efforts as well. The transition to a better model involves expanding our transit agents to do customer service and fare inspections at the station platforms, and also to deploy our navigator that's assigned with a law enforcement personnel to our stations to do outreach. That program, the Navigator program, has been very successful for RT and should be considered to expand as funding allows. Our third initiative that I want to highlight is transitioning our Security Operations Center to a 24-hour operation. We've talked about this effort before, and we've come up with a model that we think will work in an effort to be more efficient and cost and work efficient. We are going to put our Security Operations Center staff from the guard contract over to personnel service contracts. By doing so, we're able to pay them going rates for their type of work in the region by increasing their pay and also reducing costs for RT. So we plan to bring that before the board sometime in March. The next program I'll talk about is this year I took over the safety program for RT. We've developed some initiatives to get us into regulatory compliance and change the culture to be more safety focused within regional transit. One of the initiatives is to fix our staffing issues. Currently we have 2 members in our safety department, and we are currently hiring for a chief environmental health and system safety position. And our effort will be to get to 3 total staff members. By doing so, we'll be able to be in better compliance with CPUC and FTA regulations for that position, as well as be able to have a succession planning program, which we've lacked over the years. So we're hoping to create positions that can move up in the organization so we can build within for the future. Next initiative for the safety division is overall changing the culture or safety awareness, both internally and externally for our riders. And we'll do so with some safety awareness campaigns and making sure that our employees are on time with their training that they're required to have to stay in compliance. Final initiative is to highlight developing our better relationship with CPUC. We have a bunch of findings and recommendations by CPUC that have been unclosed for many years. And so we've reached out to CPUC, and our effort will be to close those out and mitigate any issues that are open so we can start fresh. And that concludes my presentation. I'll introduce the VP of Communication and Partnerships, Deborah Salinas.
Good morning. Our 7th initiative is strategic communications. Robust communications requires a great plan. The strategic communications plan will promote RT's much enhanced transit services, programs, and initiatives, including what we are presenting today to increase ridership and revenue. Increasing brand awareness and building ridership will require ongoing promotion of RT's bus and light rail services to core and new market segments. RT will engage, inspire, and encourage people to value public transportation and demonstrate RT's commitment to providing a clean, safe, friendly, and reliable transportation system in the Sacramento region. This can be accomplished several ways. Generate positive media coverage by quickly responding to requests for information, and for more detailed requests, gather information and respond within 24 hours. Go beyond just sending press releases or holding press conferences, but instead build relationships. In this new age of technology, the way we do business and promote it is transforming. We need to be open to all communication channels, whether it be in print or electronic form, to quickly get information to our customers. Communication is a high priority in the new era of RT. We will include our regional partners to build excitement. RT will show the region that we are not just a transportation option, but part of the overall experience, whether riders are traveling for work, school, or leisure. Great partnership building requires excellent communications. RT will build, enhance, and maintain cooperative relationships with partner entities and community stakeholders to creatively advance planning efforts and other district-wide initiatives that impact the economic vitality of the region. We will develop strategies to maintain transparent, clear, and consistent communication with internal and external stakeholders and partners. Proactively seek new partnerships and maintain support with existing partners to enhance current and future district initiatives. Conduct activities to advance transit supportive legislation and secure continued funding for public transit, including working with state legislators to lower the voter threshold to 55%. Continue to support community engagement by proactively participating and/or sponsoring community festivals, fairs, and programs to increase transit awareness and build relationships. Identify and focus on growth ridership markets such as millennials. Develop a comprehensive advertising strategy and explore new marketing revenue opportunities. Implement new programs and strategies to maximize advertising revenue, such as we did with train wraps. Stimulate additional ridership through partnerships with developers such as the Ice Blocks project, where there is limited parking for the residents' employees who live and work in the development. And make sure we assess our needs by measuring the results. We can create numerous campaigns, but if we don't send the right message or reach the right market, we will not meet or exceed our goals of building ridership and increasing revenue. We know that we can be successful, as we have for ridership for Golden One Center service, and demonstrates our ability to exceed the community's expectations. I now welcome Suzanne to the podium to talk about building strong employee and labor relations.
Thank you, Deborah. My name is Suzanne Chan, and I'm very honored and privileged to be your new Vice President of Administration. Our 8th initiative is building strong employee and labor relations. At RT, we believe in building a strong employee and labor relations through maintaining a dialogue with employees and labor representatives to explore a wide range of potential changes to enhance efficiency and cost effectiveness, performing initial and periodic analysis of ideas for impact and sustainability, establishing timely communications with employees and labor organizations to facilitate changes and enhance labor management partnerships, developing priorities for collective bargaining, focusing on proposals that offer value to employees at a sustainable cost to RT, while promoting safe and reliable services to the community, and where 4 labor contracts will be open for negotiations between now and December 2018, and providing a forum for labor unions to share their concerns. We will focus on extensive industry analysis on labor trends, including pay and benefit costs, externally timely and transparent communication with labor unions to look for fair and affordable agreements, and internally working with finance, operations, and legal to present fair, reasonable, and affordable proposals for the board's review and discussion. Our 9th initiative is organizational excellence and culture change building capability. At RT, we recognize, value, and appreciate the hard work and dedication of our employees. We are committed to achieving the highest levels of organizational excellence and embracing cultural change by building our human capacity through comprehensive succession planning, attracting and retaining a high-quality workforce, providing training and upward mobility opportunities, and fostering professional and career development. We plan to achieve these activities by reviewing our current succession plan and developing and implementing a new plan in 2018, continued enhancements of our job postings, collaborating with our communications team to develop web-based marketing, participating in job fairs and industry conferences, implementing a new applicant tracking system, and streamlining our hiring processes by the end of 2017, assessing and identifying employee training needs, and continuing leadership development of our managers and staff, and implementing professional and career development opportunities so our employees may have the skills needed to succeed at the highest level. Laura will now present on optimizing business processes and culture change.
Thank you, Suzanne. In recent months, we have implemented several business optimization efforts, including minor adjustments to streamline departmental processes and procedures. We have reallocated our staffing budget to ensure that all positions required by federal regulations are in place, including audit and safety functions. We have also implemented numerous initiatives to contain costs and continue to pursue opportunities district-wide to streamline our tasks and ensure our staffing levels are consistent with industry best practices. In our effort to transform RT's culture, we will implement new performance management systems to align performance with RT's vision, value, and goals, emphasizing accountability and continuous improvement. We'll repeat and reinforce our strategic vision by communicating with employees directly, discussing it at employee meetings, and at meetings across our organization. As an example, here's a recent memo to employees about business process optimization. We will continue the recognition program to motivate our employees to perform at a higher standard. We will also work towards conducting routine employee satisfaction surveys and developing programs to support employee volunteer programs. Critical to our efforts to achieve organizational excellence and align our actions to deliver results is measuring our progress against the strategic vision. We must measure the performance of the organization and hold ourselves accountable to our peers and the community at large. We know that top-performing organizations measure performance, and this list represents industry best practices for key performance reporting, including fair revenue, ridership, and on-time performance, as well as issues critical to RT, such as the passenger inspection rate. We will also demonstrate our impact on the community by documenting jobs created. As we forge ahead, we will develop new goals in each of these areas. I'll now hand it over to Neil Nance, our VP of Strategic Planning and System Development.
Thanks, Laura. Good morning. RT's current inventory of office space is inadequate, outdated, cramped, and not suited for current uses. Due to these issues, staff will be developing a campus master plan to determine the appropriate path forward for addressing the workplace concerns. The completed plan will provide options that promote a healthier and more productive RT that builds employee morale and pride. Our current buildings were constructed during the 1960s and 1970s. The maintenance for these buildings has been deferred for several years. Most of the buildings have issues, from leaking roofs, problems with the HVAC units, mold, carpet, and paint items. As you take a look to the left and see some of the streaming PowerPoints, you see this major roof leak here. Tony Bijak did an article recently where he discussed our facilities regarding the leaking roof in this building. The positive attitude of the bucket being half full was regarding RT's renewed optimistic outlook of the future. However, the buckets in this slide are more than half full. They're overflowing. Most of the HV units are over 20 years old and have surpassed their useful lives. In addition, many employees are remote from other staff with whom they need to interact regularly. In comparison to other agencies in the region, RT has the worst work conditions by far. As we continue to push towards rebuilding our brand in the community, we should ensure our home is in order as well, not just culture and finance transformations, but working conditions as well. The current estimate to correct the deferred issues, renovate and upgrade the workspace could cost between $10 to $15 million. These costs are included in a state of good repair conversation to be discussed later. The first look at these issues provides solutions from upgrading our current facilities to relocating to a new facility. If it is determined that RT should relocate its staff, we would look to formulate a cost-neutral strategy. This strategy would begin by maximizing the value of RT's properties located in Midtown Sacramento and utilizing the proceeds from the sale of surplus properties. We could also utilize the savings accrued from ending monthly leases on office space. Our options, these options and others will be investigated during the next few months. Studies have shown that employee productivity improves if each employee has access to adequate lighting, along with comfortable temperatures and noise control. Whether we do a new facility or upgrade our current facilities, environmental, safe, and energy efficient solutions will be incorporated. Employees are frustrated when left out of communications, so a new or upgraded facility will allow staff to be relocated in the same building, which will improve coordination and communication. Appealing office space will also boost morale, and with new and refurbished space, operating costs should be reduced. Our next initiative we would talk about is transit-oriented development. TOD is typically defined as more compact development within easy walking distance of transit stations that contains a mix of uses such as housing, jobs, shops, restaurants, and entertainment. TOD neighborhoods provide for a lifestyle that's convenient, affordable, and active, and create a place where our children can play and our parents can grow old comfortably. RT's property list includes surplus and TOD identified properties. The listed property depicts nearly 70 acres with an estimated value of over $20 million. A consultant was contracted to assist RT with the sale of the listed properties. RT has developed an internal TOD working group that reviews the offers presented before requesting authorization from the board. Staff has been working and is currently negotiating several offers that will be presented to the board in the next few months. If negotiations are successful and the board approves, there could be pending transactions of nearly $5 million. There's an effort to develop an external TOD steering committee as well. Staff looks forward to sharing the current status of the program and getting additional direction from this group in the near future. With that, I'd like to introduce the acting CFO, Mr. Brent Berninger, to discuss the next initiative.
Thank you, Neil. Good morning, Chair Morin, members of the board, and members of the public. So I'm going to be talking about the fiscal challenges that RT has in front of us, short term and a little bit more further out, and then discuss how we're going to address those issues. Before I do that, I would like to kind of remind everyone that at the beginning of the month, we actually received about $41 million of TCRP funds, and that was great news here at RT. But I want to remind everyone that those funds that we had were actually used to pay down debt service, principal and interest, and actually that is restricted for capital project use. So as great as that news was, that won't help operations. So the challenges that we have right in front of us are, the first one, which is foremost, is a $29 million operating line of credit. This is an annual operating line of credit that we need to address. It's actually very unusual for transit agencies to have this type of operating line of credit. Typically what you'll see is a transit agency will enter into a line of credit when they're going out for a project and the funding is uncertain or the project expenses have a little bit of leeway there.
Brent, can I just interrupt you one quick second? So can you define TCRP for
Oh,
those?
sure.
It's just so.
Transit Congestion Relief Program.
Okay.
This was a program that was designed for capital improvement projects. It's restricted for construction-related only costs. So I want to make sure everyone understands the difference between those two.
Thanks. We just needed a clarification on that acronym. So
Sure.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. Okay. Kind of coming back to our line of credit. Like I said, it's very unusual for transit agencies to have a line of credit. And so typically what happens is when people see RT in their line of credit, they ask, why is a line of credit needed? And the answer is twofold. First is, unlike other large transit agencies, RT uses all of its preventative maintenance. These are our federal funds for operating purposes. Typically, large transit agencies are able to actually use that for capital purposes. Well, we use it for operating purposes. And having it for operating purposes, we don't receive those funds immediately. There's a delay in those funds. So we have to wait for those funds to come in, which is why we need that line of credit. The second reason is some of these other transit agencies are actually in a better position from a local funding perspective. Earlier in the presentation, Henry brought up the point that we receive 1/6 of 1 cent. These other transit agencies, and we're going to cover them a little further in the presentation, receive a lot more funds, and they're able to actually use those funds to build reserves or set aside for cash needs, short-term borrowing needs. Okay, so the next discussion point I want to talk about is the $3.5 million annual bond debt service payment for the next 23 years. So back in 2012, we entered into a bond issuance. At that time, we had a $5.5 million annual payment. With the receipt of the TCRP funds, we were actually able to bring that down from 5.5 down to 3.5 million. But what's important to understand is that is a $3.5 million operating fund and what we refer to kind of as a future deficit that we need to kind of deal with for the next 23 years. We can't use project money. We can't use these other capital funds for that purpose. That has to come out of our operating budget. So that's a really important thing that we have to discuss. The next challenge that we have is the STA funds. This is the state diesel tax funds, and this STA is referred to as state transit assistance. These funds do fluctuate. We've actually seen in the last 2 years, we've seen a double-digit decline percentage in these funds. And in fact, about 6 years ago, there was a point where we actually didn't receive any funds. So relying on STA funds is not a good way to handle our business. We got to find a better way and another revenue stream for that. The next item I want to talk about is cap and trade funds. These are funds that are also volatile. They're subject to market fluctuations, and also they're also subject to regional declines that we've seen. Another area that we've seen a declining fund is what we refer to as CMAQ, and this is Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Funds. Typically what happens is a transit agency, if they want to bring on a new line, whether it's a new light rail line or new bus service, the federal government will supplement some of those lost revenues for you to build up in those first 3 to 5 years. Well, when we brought on the South Line, we received about $2 million annually for the next 3 years. Now that that line is actually in place and has been operating for many years, we're going to actually see a decline in that CMAQ money. So that's something we have to be aware of. Now on the expense side, I want to bring up another point, which is the CNG cost. This is the cost that we have to pay for fueling our buses. So we've actually done a really good job in this area. We actually buy in bulk. We work with the Department of General Services to enter into purchasing contracts, and they also hedge the pricing fluctuations. That's been actually really steady. But what's happened recently is we've got hit with a new transportation fee that was passed on by PG&E, and that's out of our control. It's out of everyone's control that's purchasing into this area. And now this fee is actually doubling, and it's almost the same cost that we have for actually the fuel itself. So this is something new that we've dealt with just this year, and we have to start looking at figuring out ways to address that in future budgets. And then lastly, we used to get a CNG federal rebate credit, and that's gone away. And so that's disappointing for us. And then last but not least, I guess, this was discussed by James and Henry as well. This is the federal fund issue that we have. To put it in perspective, we receive about $31 to $34 million of preventative maintenance funds. This represents about 21% of RT's operating budget. So to eliminate that federal funds, that would be a huge hole in RT's operating budget. If that had to happen all at once, that would result in a declaration of fiscal emergency. That would have problems with our banking partners and our rating agencies. So we really want to steer away from that if possible, or find another source to kind of replace those federal funds. So with all that bad, I guess, negative news, I do want to talk about what we're doing to kind of solve those issues. It's going to be a two-part approach. We need to address it from an expense side, but we also need to find new revenue streams. On the expense side, we need to start with benchmarking our lines of business. This includes our operational and administrative. Once we figure out how we're doing compared to our peers, then we need to look at the cost drivers and see what is driving those costs. Can we reduce those costs in any way? Can we improve efficiencies? And then we also need to find a way to do business differently. We've been doing business for many years now the same way. We need to look at doing things differently. We need to look at our paratransit costs. That's one of our largest non-labor costs. We need to look at our guard costs, which is another huge cost here, and find efficiencies that can result in cost savings. Now I'd like to turn this over to Mark to discuss the unfunded initiatives.
Okay, this is an area where we need community help. So what I'd like to do is just direct your attention to this chart. This is a list of state of good repair items that totals $360 million. I'm not going to go through every item, but I'd like to highlight a few of them from this list. The first one has to do with the replacement of our first light rail vehicles manufactured by Siemens. Believe it or not, those vehicles reach the end of their 30-year useful life in just a couple of days. They went into service in March of 1987. And that's a little bit sobering when you think about 30 years of service for those vehicles and over 1.6 million miles on average for each car. They've been a real workhorse. And just because they reach the end of their useful life, it doesn't mean that we need to remove them from service. But we are, and we can certainly continue to operate them safely, but we are beginning to see an increase in failures. We're beginning to see more issues with the vehicles and less availability for service. And their replacement cost is approximately $162 million. With the replacement of those vehicles, we start a very important transition to a low-floor fleet of light rail vehicles. And a low-floor fleet just improves accessibility for everyone. It would be a great improvement and a necessary step in RT's future. But to do that, we'll also need to modify our older light rail stations, about 42 of them, to accommodate low-floor vehicles at a cost of about $50 million. The final item I would like to highlight from this list is about the middle of the list where it says CAF midlife. A best industry practice for a light rail vehicle is to do some measure of overhaul at about its midlife point, which for a 30-year vehicle would be 15 years. The CAF vehicles have been in service now for 14 years. Their midlife, their 15-year point would be reached in September of 2018. Our estimate to do a midlife overhaul on the vehicles, although the scope can vary, and so the cost can vary, would be around $40 million. Those are all key projects to keeping a reliable light rail system.
Okay, Mark, before you bounce off this, Director Cerna has a question.
Yeah, Mark, real quick, just for the public's edification, can you explain what the CAF vehicles are?
The CAF's a manufacturer, a Spanish manufacturer of light rail vehicles. Siemens is German manufacturer of light rail vehicles, although they have a major manufacturing facility right here in Sacramento. And the other third type of vehicle, which isn't on the list here, is manufactured by UTDC, which was a Canadian light rail vehicle manufacturer, and that represents the vehicle manufacturers for our light rail fleet. Now I'd like to turn this back to Ms. Laura Ham to discuss more on route optimization.
Okay, So on route optimization, on the screen you'll see a map that shows the existing RT network with 15-minute service in green, 30-minute service in purple, and 60-minute service in yellow, as well as several key areas where we have gaps in service. This illustrates some areas where we are sorely lacking in route frequency. On Sundays, we have only 2 bus routes that have 30-minute service. Everything else is hourly. On weekends, light rail only runs every 30 minutes. And on weekdays, we have only 4 bus routes with 15-minute headways. This map conceptualizes how the RT network could change with $50 million in increased local funding annually, providing more service overall and growing the number of routes at 15 and 30-minute frequency. We would expand key area coverage as well as address span of service, early, late, and weekend service. On-time performance and reliability issues would be largely resolved. Bus service overall would grow by about 25%, with 25 to 50% of service at 15 minutes or better. More specifically, we could increase the number of 7-day-a-week bus routes with 30-minute frequency from 2 to 20. We could add another 10 bus routes at 15-minute frequency, cover the operating and maintenance costs for an expanded light rail network, and have 15-minute light rail service on the weekend. So now I'll hand it back to Neil Nance to discuss capital expansion.
Laura, before you leave the podium there, Director Budge.
Yeah, Laura, I appreciate the comments about the expansion of service, but it's kind of been my impression that route optimization would also look at service that is not productive. And so rather than just expand the system and pay more to expand the system, there would be cost savings from routes that weren't productive and were eliminated, or just general changes to the direction of flow of the service.
Yes, that's an excellent clarifying point. So the initial route optimization study will look at our existing network and where we can gain efficiencies and reallocate our existing resources. This envisions how the system could grow and increase frequency on productive services with additional local funding.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, Laura. Major capital expansion projects. RT has several major plans for expansion, from the Green Line expansion to the airport to Elk Grove's extension from Simmons River College to Bighorn Road. These expansions is estimated to cost nearly $1.5 billion. The Sacramento Valley Station Loop project consists of the design and construction of a new light rail station west of 5th Street to better serve the intermodal Amtrak station. The final design is scheduled for completion in December of 2018. There's an additional project that ties to 7th and F Streets. It's estimated to cost another $50 million. This project is required for the Green Line operations to the Sacramento Airport. No funding is currently identified for this project. The Green Line to the Airport project includes the design and construction of 13 miles of rail from Township 9 to the airport. The project is currently in the environmental phase. The environmental impact study is scheduled for completion in the fall of 2018. The project is estimated to cost $1 billion. There will be challenges regarding the alignment through certain communities, as well as the coordination required for the American River crossing. The $200 million streetcar project would extend from the West Sacramento Civic Center to the Midtown Entertainment and Retail District in Sacramento. The proposed project also includes the design and construction of 6 modern streetcars and a new streetcar vehicle maintenance facility. There will be over a mile of shared track between streetcar and light rail. RT is currently acting as the technical lead during the design and construction of the project. It is anticipated that RT will be the original operator of the streetcar as well. As you may be aware, driverless vehicle capabilities are growing daily. There will surely be an opportunity for driverless vehicles for public transportation in Sacramento in the near future. We will continue to monitor the technology and advancements in this area. With that, I will turn it back over to Mr. Brent Benninger for the next item.
Thank you, Neil. So the next item is the 4 major priorities as it relates to fares, and I'm going to see if I can get the next slide to Click. There we go. This is actually my favorite slide right here. If this doesn't say enough of kind of where we're going to go, where we'd like to go in the future, the first initiative is find a way to offer free fares to students. This is an area where we get a lot of feedback. Currently, we provide significant discounts, but we think offering free fares to this community would improve our ridership. We're projecting that if we could do this, we could actually build ridership by about 1 million rides, which would be great. The next area we'd like to talk about is ADA fare discounts. This is an area where we get a lot of comments at the open houses and at fare change discussions. This group of riders express a strong need for discounts, and due to many limitations and challenges they have, we need to find a way to help them out. The third area that we're looking at is holding fares flat for the next 10 years. This is actually one of my personal favorites because that would limit my time at the podium with fare increases. So, and this is actually an area where, you know, there is a lot of, it's an unpopular discussion that we have to have. We don't like to do that. So that's kind of another topic. One thing I'd like to talk about is when we talked about student fares, I'd like to make sure I clarify that the free student fares is kindergarten through 12th grade. We have student programs in place for the college kids, but I just want to do that as a clarifying point. And then last is the offering free transfers or zone fares we're looking at. This is another area that we're hearing a lot of complaints from our riders at these open houses. We have a bus and rail system, and if we don't have a good transferability, it makes it difficult for the riders to join and improve ridership. So now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Lee to discuss plannings for funding RT.
Thank you, Brent. We actually scheduled about 75 minutes for this presentation. So far, we spent about 65 minutes. So we have 10 more minutes to finish this. Okay. I think I can do that in less than 10 minutes. Now, after that, I'm going to turn to our consultant, Mr. Doug Carter, for the Q&A session and questions and answers. We just talked about 12 initiatives we believe we will implement within our current financial constraint. By doing that, we will make sure we are not going to, we're going to eliminate our long-term operating deficit and also try not to affect our service level and our fare structure. Then we need a community support to invest in this community for themselves to grow and develop a much better public transportation system here. We actually, when we talk about this in the last 3 months, the RT staff, we were thinking maybe we set up a goal too high, we may not be able to achieve, because by any industry standard, any transit agency, if they can take 2 or 3 this type of initiatives, that would be very good. But we're talking about 12 plus 4. But then we thought again and again, we just do not have luxury to wait, because we're already behind our peer agencies in last about 15 to 20 years. We just cannot wait. We have to address these issues so the community can trust us, can work with us to build a better public transportation system in this region. So if we look at first, the ongoing operating shortfall or the fund financial forecast, that $10 million will help us on reducing the line of credit, build up reserve, and address short-term funding issue and ongoing operating shortfall. The focus is here, is in this slide. If you look at number 1 to, or whatever, it doesn't work. Okay. Item 1 to 3, that was the original Measure B trying to address. The state of good repair will fix it first, and the capital expansion and the O&M cost for the capital expansion. But when we talk to the community, organizations, almost, the consensus is we need to optimize our existing system, then add more service, especially bus feeder services, and increase our schedule frequencies. That will actually, will really attract our potential riders with other choices. If we have a 10 minutes frequency for our bus and light rail, or even less, and people will not need to wait. And from item 6 to 8, that was what Brent just talked about. So if we add all this together, the unfunded needs about $82 million, which is close to 1/3 of 1 penny. But this does not include the potential reduction of $35 million annual federal grant, federal transit operating assistance for RT. That is a totally other story if that will happen. Look at our peer comparison. The local sales tax or tax measures. ALA receives 1.5 penny, and BOT receives whole 1 penny. TriMet in Portland receives sales tax equivalent revenue about 3/4, and Portland is half penny, and they were actually pursuing another half in last November. They failed, like us, and RT is 1/6 of 1 penny. If we look at actually, Laura talked about our existing light rail system and the expanded light rail framework. Our regional visionary 20 or 30 years ago, those regional leaders, including Mayor Serna, the city of Sacramento mayor, they actually built a wonderful foundation for the light rail framework for this region, which is a backbone of the regional public transportation system. And it is a truly a regional asset, and it is up to us to maintain, upgrade, and expand this asset to its fullest potentials. Compared to other regions, our light rail system, the whole structure framework is actually very good. However, we did not maintain it to its good status because of the severe lack of the local funding. And we certainly did not invest to add more feeder bus routes to move riders from different corridors to the nearest light rail stations. Instead, we actually cut 25 to 30% of bus service 8 years ago, and we only have 200 buses. And those bus routes concentrate on downtown-centric long bus routes, while our peer cities or agencies such as San Diego and Portland, they have over 800 buses. They 3 to 4 times more than us. That's why the system is so convenient. And San Diego actually spent over $700 million to upgrade its infrastructure and fleet in the last 10 years, which they have since half penny of local sales tax. Again, right here in Sacramento, this is what we received, 1/6 of 1 penny. And now we are asking Sacramento community to invest only additional 1/3 of 1 penny sales tax for the public transportation for this beautiful region with lots of great potentials. Look at this chart. recently I get some, we get some feedback and requests to say, can we extend our the light rail to Roseville? Can we extend our light rail to West Sac and Davis? Davis should be here, far from here, but because the map, cannot expand. If we look at this system, this framework, this is truly nearly perfect framework, a light rail framework, and covered all major corridors. And like Laura just mentioned, the route optimization study will engage many community stakeholders and identify where we will add bus routes, how we can improve the efficiency, and which hotel, which hospital, which retail center, which employment centers, we're going to add those bus feeder routes so the community can feel and envision the tangible and real benefit in 2 years. And if they're going to vote for the additional sales tax. This is the key to the success for a new sales tax measure, and someday, we hope we can get to this point, but this may be a long, journey. So, we are thinking about in last 2 years or something, year and a half, we had comprehensive transformation or overhaul of this agency. Then in the next 2 years, we will try to build a solid track record of success and to prove to the community that we can do the best job possible by any industry standards. And then we would like to work with community to realize the exciting growth and a sustainable future for a well-run public transit agency. And we know, we have a long way to go, but we are optimistic. And our major initiatives in the next 2 years will address the consequences of our past decisions. And we will unite community, and we will try to make this region a world-class region. And our staff are inspired to do the best we could to perform beyond and above. And we are working with lots of regional partners for the improvement. Recently, I met with some regional leaders, and I am very encouraged by their strong support. Last week, I had a chance to meet with Sacramento City Mayor, Mr. Stamberg, and he's very, very supportive, along with other regional leaders I talked about. Specifically, I will talk to those regional leaders, with doubt about us, try to convince them to help us. Some initial feedback from them is, Henry, as long as if you can present a strong business case to us, we will support public transportation. But first, we need a strong business case. That is what we are doing today, we were doing in the past, and we're going to do in the future. And our board members, all of our board members, are regional leaders, and thank for your strong support and your leadership, your guidance to lead this agency to the whole new next level. And all of the community representatives, partners here, thank you for your support in the past, and we will work seamlessly, very closely with all of you and the partners who are not here today to make this region a much better region in the future. So with that, I'm going to invite our consultant, Mr. Doc Carter, to talk about the benefit of investment in public transportation and KOA session. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. RT is a good, productive partner because we add tangible value to many worthy causes in our community. When we ask other organizations and individuals to support our strategy and to invest in transit, we should talk about the return on investment that we provide for our community. A very simple one I think that we all get is, as RT is transit, we connect people to life. We connect them to their jobs. We connect them to school. We connect them to their families. We connect them to medical services, to entertainment throughout the community. But also, people don't always think about the other benefits that we provide, and I've listed a few here. The benefits that transit provides the community are real. They're well researched. There's a lot of sources that provide good quantitative data on what the benefits are. A few of those very quickly are: 1/3 of a cent sales tax produces about $100 million in additional revenues for RT. That actually translates to about $400 million in economic returns. That is, RT spends the money. When it spends the money, other organizations spend that money that are providing services in wages. Their employees buy other services in the region, and it creates economic health.
Doug, could you just, Director Hansen has a quick comment.
Just
Please.
as you go forward, one of the things I'm curious about is why we keep saying 1/3. The board hasn't necessarily weighed in on that, but why not 50-50?
Sure. I was just using a third because that was earlier in the presentation.
I understand. I was going to ask Henry, but we're going on and on.
Actually, it's my fault. Actually, I mean, some community partners ask for half-cent.
Yeah.
And some talk about just 1/4.
And Henry, can you get on the microphone there if you're speaking?
Yes.
Thanks.
We get lots of requests about half-cent, and also some requests about 1/4. But we want to be not that bold, just say, okay, 1/3. But now just to talk about the basic needs, when we talk about 1/3, is to get us our service to what level. But if we wanted to do better, we certainly a half-cent will make us much better.
And I understand that. I think the gold standard is a full 1 cent. So, I think that's where we should be aspirationally. But if we think we can only get to a half, I'd like to start there and then talk about what each level does for us. Because just as we go forward in this conversation, I don't want to lock us into shooting too low. I think we need to really look at what is our aspirational goal, which may be a full cent, and then come back from there into a conversation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. So the economic returns are going to change based on the amount of money that we invest in transit. But also you should note that at $100 million a year, that supports about 5,000 local jobs. And it provides about $300 million in increased local business sales. So when we talk to government, when we talk to the business community, when we talk to people, talking about economic stimulation, RT is in fact an economic engine in the region. Families that are using transit as their second car, that is, they keep a car, but as a second car they use transit, save at least $10,000, $175 annually, and they reduce their carbon footprint by between 10 and 30%, depending on how much they travel with that second car. Nationally, in all cities that are our size, real estate prices are 42% higher in areas near frequent transit service. That was the enhancement that was being talked about. That is, having more frequent service in local circulator routes that are feeder routes, as well as on the rail system, including on weekends. Transit users, so there's also a lot of medical research that's on transit users versus others, and all of it nationally says transit users are healthier at the end of the day. How about that? They're healthier because they have moderate walking to and from stops, lower stress from navigating congested traffic. We all get a little angry sometimes when we're in traffic, and 95% fewer traffic accidents, injuries, and deaths traveling on transit versus traveling on an automobile. So there's some real benefits. There's things that we can talk about when we talk to partners about why to invest in transit. And just kind of what we'd like to do from here is.
Mr. Chair,
Director Cerna?
before Doug goes on, can you go back to the?
Yes, please.
So the bullet point about the real estate prices being 42% higher near frequent transit service, what is the definition of frequent here? Is it 15,
It's 15 minutes for the nation. This is national data,
Okay.
but they say 15 minutes or better is their cutoff.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
So today we've heard from the RT leadership members who are engaged every day in achieving your vision and delivering the strategy. I was really motivated by that. This wasn't shelfware that we heard about where a consultant came in and put together some strategy that's buried in one of the offices on a shelf. This is actually what the staff are doing every day. And this is a lot of initiatives. Henry talked about, in his management team, about 12 initiatives. Early on, I was one of the people with Henry that said, you know, most transit operators do 3 to 6, and it's because they have a limited team that's working on the 3 to 6. Henry and his management team took a very different approach, one that has been wildly successful in the past, but hard to make work because you have to motivate everybody. He's gotten every department and every part of RT focused on improving the success of RT, what we contribute to our community for the future. That's really important. That is the most successful performing transit operators in the country. It's a big thing to bite off. Everybody's got to pull their weight. It's an all hands on deck strategy, and it's working here, and you're seeing results because of that. What the team would really like to do is get some feedback from the board. Does this strategy look right? What are the next things we should be talking about? How do we collectively reach out to the community to show the benefits that we are providing and what more we intend to do?
Okay, thanks, Doug. So what we'll do is I do have a number of requests to speak from the folks who are here and have sat through the presentation. So we'll start with comments from them, and then Doug will get you back up there, and then just entertain questions and comments from the board here, if that works for everyone. So with that, we'll start off with Helen O'Connell. Helen's right up front here. We can get her a microphone. After Helen will be Brenda Anderson, and after Brenda will be Ray Pingle.
And I'm going to ask that those are able-bodied and can go to the podium to do so. We will not pass the microphone around, except for those that need it.
Good morning, Helen.
Good morning, board. I was very happy to listen to the presentation and get the information because I'm on the RT MAC board, and I want to be able to be an informed participant. Under the fares, you said free student fares, level playing fields, and I was wondering if you were going to reinstate the free seniors over the age of 80. That has been withdrawn, and I think it would be a good PR to allow our seniors that are already financially strapped to be able to use the system unimpeded.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Helen. We'll add that to our wish list there. And so Brenda, where is Brenda at? Brenda's right here.
Hello again.
Good evening, Brenda.
A wealth of information here, and that compliment I gave you guys, I take it back. Okay, I am sick and tired of you guys shoving the Golden One Center down my throat. Surely, regional transit has access to other places that you can stress and tell me that you're going to. Anywhere. Tell me that you're going somewhere. Every single initiative, I got it listed here. told me they were going to the Golden One Center and how they're going to get there. Is the Golden One Center paying anybody, regional transit, any supported money? Are they? Yes, they are. That they need to pay more because you guys are really putting it out there. Second of all, outreach. Are there any surveys out there for the community? I go to a church in the Pocket area. I catch paratransit, but my friend, she has to do pickup rides from different members. The bus don't run on Sunday, and the ones that run on Sunday don't go out there. And no community outreach person's gone out to any church anywhere out and asked these people, how are you guys getting here on Sunday? And these are religious people. Don't slap the religious community in the face by not giving them access to their facilities. Please have that much respect. The college level and high schools, are there any type of internship programs with regional transit that will give these people access to entry-level jobs other than going to the job market or the displays or off-site offices that you have here? Some kind of entryway that regional transit can bring in people. You say that you're short and you got an attendance problem and things like that. Okay, let me go to here. I got so many pages here that I have to go on. I am not here to be brainwashed. Stop this Golden One stuff. You got it. We got it. Everybody knows they're blooming out there. We got it. If I was going to the Olive Garden commercial, I go there and eat myself full. If I want to go to Disneyland, I watch it. You put a commercial out there on TV, show somebody getting on the bus or on the light rail, maybe more people go out there and get on it. You talk about media, you talk, is that a buzz for my time up?
Yeah, you got a few seconds here, Brenda.
Okay. My biggest thing is outreach. Go out there. You're not getting enough outreach there. Your communication program initiative, they say we value public transportation. Well, anyway, I'll write you guys a letter.
Yeah.
Mr. Lee, you was at that meeting at the paratransit that you got a folder out there that says expensive lifts. Nobody can get them because we can't afford them on paratransit. Why are those brochures out there? Who's paying for them? And how much money are y'all getting back for it? What are they doing there? I asked you to take them out. I asked the board to take them out. I asked these people here, some of y'all remember me, take those brochures out or make somebody pay for them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I'll write
Thanks.
you a letter.
Thanks, Brenda.
Mr. Chairman, can I have just 1 second?
You bet, Henry.
Okay. Actually, I think what you just talking about is exactly what we plan to do. I only talk about the Golden One service in the past. In the future, we're going to talk about the entire community. That's exactly what we're.
Right here now.
Yes, but maybe I did not.
This is your chance right now to tell me what you're going to do and where you're going to go and how you're going to do it and when and what. And you did not do that. You stood and told me about the Golden One Center. You invested all your big shops and all your money. It's a disgrace when they showed me how. I started looking up at the ceiling, see if anything was falling down when he talked about the disarray of the building. And if you talk about all the money you got, then you got to get your house in order and pay a better office.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I want you to write me a letter and tell me why those brochures are on that bus and it's still there because you was at that meeting.
Okay,
Thank
we
you very
got.
much. I expect to hear from you.
We got the message. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
So Ray is up. After Ray is Barbara Stanton. Ray?
Hi, good morning, all. First of all, I have to really congratulate Henry Lee and his team on really a superb presentation, just really awesome. My name is Ray Pingle. I'm from Sierra Club, California, and we're very active participants in the current California Air Resources Board zero-emission rulemaking. Bus rulemaking. Sierra Club would like to urge SAC-RT to aggressively begin the transition to electric buses, especially as it considers its approach in replacing 91 CNG buses by 2020. Many agencies in the state are already making this transition, including the 85-bus Antelope Valley Transit Agency, which will have 100% electric buses by the end of next year, probably the first in the nation to do this. The 332-bus Foothill Transit currently has 17 electric buses, will have 40 next year, and has set a goal of 100% electric buses by 2030. The 20-bus UC Irvine fleet will be 100% zero-emission buses by 2018. And this is being paid for through a student fee that was voted on by the students, which I think is really cool. In the past year, the number of California transit agencies that either have or are ordering zero-emission buses has nearly doubled now to 30 agencies. And all of these agencies would not be doing this if the cost for electric buses today were too high or if the technology was not reliable. Range is no longer a limiting factor for transit agencies. Over 50% of bus routes are less than 150 miles, according to a recent CARB survey. Proterra, for example, now makes a bus with a range of 350 miles. BYD has a bus with a range of 200 miles. And en-route charging supports even longer daily routes. So range is no longer really an issue. Battery and bus costs are continuing a steady and significant downward trend that is forecast to continue for many years in the future. Last May, for example, Proterra announced an increase in battery density that resulted in a range increase of 28% and at no increase in cost. Proterra and BYD buses have dropped over $200,000, more than 20% in the last 4 years. They're about $750,000 a bus, and both makers estimate further cost reductions of another $100,000 by 2022. In fact, it's forecast by about that time frame, electric buses could be very close in cost to CNG buses. Fuel and maintenance operating costs for electric buses are less expensive than for CNG buses. And SAC-RT is very fortunate to have SMUD as the utility, which has some of the lowest rates in the state. Lastly, California is becoming an electric bus capital of the U.S. with 3 electric bus makers, so good-paying jobs will be created in manufacturing electric buses and building infrastructure. So I'd just like to really encourage SAC-RT. I think now's the time. I think if you do a study, you'll find that electric buses, total cost of ownership, is equal to, maybe even more favorable than CNG buses.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Ray. So we have Barbara up. After Barbara is Rory Barlow.
Good morning, everybody. Barbara Stanton, Ridership for the Masses. I want to thank you for bringing out this presentation. We hope to work with you, and I'm sure other community members would like to work with you on this vision. And we'd like to say something about a little-known service that Paratransit Inc. has, and it's called Mobility Training. And Mobility Training is a service that's free to people who can go to Paratransit Inc., sign up for the service, and maybe they don't want to get on the light rail, they're afraid to get on the light rail or the bus. They want to go to the doctor, but they don't know how to do that. Paratransit Inc. will provide that service to them. They will come to their house, they will accompany them on a route, they will make a route for them, and they will accompany them on the bus to the route a number of times to make sure that the person feels safe and comfortable taking light rail. And we would like to see Accessible Services partner up with Paratransit Inc. So when they do their screening for paratransit service, maybe they could find that people could actually ride the light rail or the buses. So we would like to see them partner with Paratransit Inc. and maybe reduce some of the ridership that's on paratransit and the cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. So next is Rory, and after Rory is Bill Smith.
I could spend a lot of time talking about the need for their strategic communication that we talked about. We have been trying to get answers on the Green Line since our last meeting in December of 2015, where a PR firm put on a little rah-rah but had no answers for us at all. As far as helping financial, Mr. Lee, I'd say take the Green Line off the agenda, and it might help your bottom line a lot. There is no support in South Natomas for the Green Line. Mr. Cerna, you did an awesome job of moving out the homeless camps that were causing the fires around Arden. But we're your constituents too, and where they moved is to our community. They are now have taken over our park. They are camped in the slough. When the slough has water in it, they are camped against our back fences.
So,
They-
Rory, do you have comments specific to our agenda item here? That's a little off topic there.
I filled out a non-topic card.
Oh, I had it as specific to this agenda item. So anything in addition to the
I
green
can
line?
say specifically that 42% higher real estate prices nationwide refers specifically to lines that connect to major urban areas. And as far as home property values, that goes away within 3 blocks. I can say that successful TOD provide does not apply to the green line. We are not a sprawl area in South Natomas. We are not going to take the light rail half a mile to Bel Air. The infrastructure of $1.2 billion is what we were last told, does not equal the need, the fact that simple bus service would take care of all of us there. And Mr. Cerna, if you would get the county to release those 600 home vouchers, well, now, when the time is right, because the county does handle homelessness and mental health,
Rory,
that would
we need to-
eliminate
we need to stay on
a
topic.
lot of the opposition to the Green Line in South Natomas.
Can I respond?
You bet, Chair. Or
Just before you leave the podium, or if you care to listen, you're welcome to come to the Board of Supervisors hearing tomorrow.
Time.
We did come here and say last year and say if nobody would talk to us, we would join with the animal tax forces and we would maybe
Okay. The Board of Supervisors meets tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Great. Thanks, Director Cerna. Bill Smith after Bill is Jeffrey Tardigia, and after Jeffrey is Becky Hike. Good evening, Bill.
Good morning. Last time I spoke was with Andy at
You
Folsom.
got 3 minutes, Bill.
3 minutes. Okay, let me speak in reverse. In 3 years, we're going to have vacuum tubes that are minimization, vehicles, platooning. We're not going to be spending $1 billion at the airport for 13 miles. It's going to cost a lot less money. In 2 years, we're going to have drones with passengers. They're putting them in Qatar by the summer. In 1 year, by Christmas, we're going to advance the production of my vehicles. I'm combining 100 vehicles to start. 450-pound payload. You ready for this on Fair Oaks Boulevard? With a rapid bus? I'm going to raise your ridership by 30% before the end of the year. I hitchhiked the whole way here on my bicycle, slowing down on every hill with atypical heart pain. I'm a statistician. I'm inviting all the non-statisticians that Donald's about to let go. I'm the guy who said solar energy to him, and I got the tax credits cut off. The economists are going to take a hike. My girl's brother and his father are from Berkeley. And my girl is going to be next to me, Goldilocks from the opera. I'm going to be doing my vehicle as a rowing machine if you get tired. She was the first woman coxswain with the rowing teams for the high school boys. They had them at the Thomas Lake with the girls. What I'm going to do is going to be the 5th Industrial Revolution after I do the 4th one. Speak to you.
Okay, Jeffrey. And after Jeffrey is Becky.
Well, good morning, Board. One of the things I'd like to bring to your attention is, lo and behold, this is not your choice ridership, but these are people that are interested. I bring it to your attention to encourage you to consider that maybe once a year or every other year that you plan a day board meeting like this to get other people involved, because a number of them may not make it at 6 o'clock at night. At the same time, I will also bring to the board of one of the things that I kind of lambasted you guys this year was because up until December, you made great efforts. What needs to change is customer service, not 9 to 5. It needs to be 20 hours so that when there are problems on any of the light rails, that you have the means of communicating and keeping the riders informed of what is going on. I like the plan, but at the same time, what we'll say to you is over the next 18 months or less, you need to figure out how you go about going after a transit form measure, because you're also going to have, likely to have, a home, so we say, or affordable housing tax. And as you've also clearly seen, that you are going to have other issues in reduced funding. So indeed, I appreciate Steve's comment about, hey, you should be at least looking for a half-cent tax. In the meantime, you also need to be looking at what other alternative services you are proposing to fund things. Unfortunately, you're beyond the time to introduce new legislative at the state level for this year's cycle, but I think you need to be examining what locally, what statewide would encourage. The last thing I will say, one of the prime reasons I am here is because I don't want to see Sacramento become another miniature Los Angeles. They are spending, as you say, a minimum of 1 cent because they can't put any more transportation. They have to use public transportation. In the meantime, as even they're losing ridership, they're having to make that investment because there is no other means than getting people to ride more public transportation. So I like the map that goes on there. I will encourage Andy to say this year, it would be real nice if there would be some better means of public transportation out to the Harris Center, which is another revenue source that you might encourage ridership. And I'm hoping that Regional Transit is doing something for the 9,000 riders that will be coming in here in May.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. So Becky, followed by Becky, is Joan Barton, and then Tiffany Fink. Good morning, Becky.
Good morning. Good morning, RT staff and board. I'm Becky Hike. I'm the Executive Director of the North Natomas Transportation Management Association. We've been in business since 1999 and been providing bike and walk to school services for the North Natomas area. We have a robust bicycle program. We also have a robust shuttle program that started as a shopper shuttle in about 2002. We've grown to now 6 vehicles, 4 routes, 12 loops, Monday through Friday, all serving the commute public. We're carrying about 92,000 riders per year, so compared to RT, we're kind of the very little engine that could, but we're keeping on. North Natomas has come back, and the building moratorium was lifted, the economy's back. We're a little bit worried about our shuttle program right now, in that several houses are being completed on the west side of I-5, so not several hundred. Greenbrier is coming online up by the airport at 3,000 units. Panhandle is coming online at 1,600 single-family units, and of course we all know that Amazon's coming on this fall with 2,000 employees. All that will greatly impact North Natomas. Greenbrier has asked us to service them as far as the shuttle goes. We're not sure we have the capacity. In fact, we think we probably don't. We're worried about Panhandle because Panhandle is within our boundaries already, and we're expected to service them. Not sure how we're going to be able to do that. So I think the The terrific idea here is your route optimization study. I know it'll be very expensive. It will take at least a couple years. And I'd like you to think about North Natomas first. And because of our growth, we need an analysis of our travel patterns. We need a demand analysis now. And we're at the end of our shuttle contract. And in fact, RT happens to be our vendor for that now. So I'm hoping that you will consider this, to study a much smaller area for your route optimization study. It'll be much less expensive. It can be accomplished sooner. And I'd hope that you use North Natomas for that initial study. You could use this as a template for the rest of the city. Perhaps we could get SACOG and the city and RT and the TMA together to help fund that smaller study. And through all of this, perhaps RT could consider taking back some of North Natomas's transit responsibilities, and together we could create a timeline and a process for that. We're just not federally funded. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky, and we'll definitely be incorporating all of what you just said. So Joan, followed by Tiffany.
Guess what? I'm standing.
Okay, here you go.
It is a challenge from time to time, but if I can stand out of my wheelchair, maybe you'll hear my congratulations on this beautiful program this morning. Thank you. The other thought that I have was when I heard the fellow talk about electric, I can imagine buses with solar, charge stations. That would be awesome. Then the important thing isn't what Joan Barden thinks, but it is the community. And when you're reaching out to make a partnership with the community, I am impressed with the idea that our neighborhood associations could possibly gather with you, maybe not as a whole association meeting, but maybe the board members would be able to find and help create a committee that would meet with you and give the individual needs in each community. Oak Park has its own needs. Curtis Park has its own needs. Over in Curtis Park, 62 was dropped. There's no bus line going on that 24th Street like it used to be. I know that at one time, there was a bus that went along 37th Street where I live. It doesn't go there anymore. I used to take it in order to go to State. Okay, I am 81 years old today. Oh, actually it began on the 12th, Lincoln and I. But I am 81. I'm an ancestor. And I really want to see the future grow. And that partnership will be the best thing that we can possibly do. And you're welcome to call me anytime to help. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Okay, Tiffany.
Good morning, Chair Morgan, board members. I'm Tiffany Fink. I'm the CEO at Paratransit Inc. I just wanted to say thank you to Henry Lee. We've really re-engaged the conversation between Paratransit and RT, and I think we're seeing a lot of positive outcome. I want to let you know our board is committed to working closer with the RT board. We want to see a partnership that goes beyond just ADA service. As was mentioned, we provide mobility training not only to people with disabilities or the elderly, but we're doing a lot of outreach for familiarization training to students trying to access employment and education. So we look forward to continuing to partner to find cost-effective solutions, and we're ready to be at the table to do that. This region's stronger together, and we're a big partner, and we look forward to that and that communication. So thank you.
Thank you for being here, Tiffany, and congratulations on your recent appointment as CEO of Paratransit. Okay, that concludes comments from the group there. And so before we get to director comments, I just want to thank everybody who came out here this morning. And trust me, everything that was said by you, I mean, this was, this initial effort at outreach here, just across the community. So everything spoken from the podium there is being logged, and as much of that as possible will be incorporated as we go forward. But it's a very important process, and this isn't the last time. And some of you mentioned writing letters. Please do. We know 3 minutes isn't a lot of time, and a lot of times just digesting some of this and getting back to us via email. Every one of the directors up here love to be very responsive to ideas and comments that folks have. So again, thank you all for taking the time. And so at this point, I'll ask Doug to get back to the podium and open this up for questions, comments. We'll start out with Director Chenier and move through the group here.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Just a couple of comments and a little bit of context, and then one suggestion as we move forward. So first of all, I want to thank the general manager and all the staff. I know you guys have been working incredibly hard over the last year or so to get to where we are. I think that the context on this is incredibly important. A year ago, financially, we were in a death spiral. We were losing money. We had exhausted all of our reserves, and it didn't look like there was any promise moving forward. I think with the change of leadership, with some new folks and I think re-energized staff, you've been able to do a lot. And I don't know where you are at the end of January, but at the end of December, you were about 1.9 million to the good on our current year budget, which we haven't seen in years, frankly. We've just been going into reserves every year, which is not obviously sustainable. I want to address a little bit about the Golden One Center in this, and this is kind of for your comments. The long-term success of this organization really required us to expand on choice riders. There are a lot of folks in the room and in this community who we absolutely have to provide service for. That's part of the mission of this organization. But without expanding the choice rider, we were down to under 20%, I believe, on our fare box recovery, and in danger of losing state funding because of that, with a goal of getting back to 23%. G1 Center provided an opportunity to expose more individuals in this community to the service that we can provide and that we're now providing, which I don't think we were providing a couple of years ago. Our trains weren't clean, they weren't running on time, and there were a lot of safety issues. So a lot of the discussion around G1, and I know in the EIR we had looked at 7%, and we're running about 10% of people going to events who take this. These are, for the most part, full pay fare customers who will, again, hopefully not only ride it to Golden One, but will have a good enough experience, and we've heard a lot of that, certainly anecdotally, but will have a good enough experience that they decide to ride public transportation on an ongoing basis. To provide the services that we need to provide, that we should provide, and get anywhere close to what Henry presented and the billions of dollars that we need to do the service that this community deserves. One of those pieces is more choice riders paying full fare so that we can provide and subsidize the service that we need for everyone else. So I think that's the piece of Golden One. I think you've got that service down now, so it's not something we have to talk a lot about. But as Henry said, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reach out to people who were not riding who now are. And I know a lot of those folks, which I think is very good. There were a lot of things on the wish list. I appreciate do we want to ask seniors over 80 to ride for free? And a lot of the kids stuff is something I've been talking about, because if we change culture and habit early, those will be hopefully paid fares as they mature and go into adulthood. I think that's really important. We have requests throughout for subsidies for various groups. That's something that we need to deal with, and I think over 80 is maybe a cutoff. That's a good thing to talk about, so I want to just say I appreciate that. The kids piece I know is going to take a long time if we get there, but it's something that I hopefully, I hope that we can keep on the table. I think the route optimization study is probably the most important thing that we're going to do. And here's, Doug, where I kind of have a suggestion as we go forward. As we get into that, and we know that our work centers and our living centers have changed since many of these routes were designed. This is going to be very difficult, because if we're looking at routes that are not performing well and we decide not to have those routes or to cut back those routes, there will be losers in this, and people will be upset, and we've seen that before. So I just want us to, number one, be prepared for that as we go forward in this. This is not all where can we add service, this is where should our service be. And so I think there's a very distinct difference between those two things, and it's going to require this board working with the community to make some really hard choices as those results come back in. My suggestion is that as we go out into the community and do the route optimization, we pair that with budget exercises, because I don't think we can, otherwise what we're going to do is come back and say, these are all the routes we need, and we'll have a price tag of X number of millions of dollars that we can't afford. I want to make sure that we think about this in terms of what we should look like. So the aspirational goal of what routes should look like in the city and the county, the region, to service all of our clients, but also with a realistic view of what we can do and how we can do it over what period of time to get there. So I'm hoping that there's lots of good budget exercises, but that we don't go just and talk about routes, but we pair that with budget exercises so people know what the cost is and where that might fit or not fit into our budget. And a lot of what we talked about, whether it's electric buses or more routes on Sundays or whatever, all that costs money, and we're going to have to figure out where that money might come from. The last thing I want to do, and I know Ralph Niz is not here, correct, Ralph? Unless you're being really quiet, which is unlike Ralph, yes. I do want to give kudos to ATU as the union that represents our drivers and our light rail operators and others. We would not have been able to make the changes around safety and bringing in our transit officers. They have come forward with a smaller raise than was originally anticipated and on our books, and I think totally understand where we're trying to go as an organization and the absolute necessity of working with our employee groups to get there. So I just want to give a little shout out to Ralph and hope somebody can relay that to him. I'll see him later this week, but we can't do this alone. We need community input on what we're doing. When we come back with hopefully a Measure B 2.0, whatever that looks like, and there's work going on now around we did a full analysis of where that was. We did really well in the city. We got over 70%, but there are parts outside of the city where we got 54%. And whatever we do, it's not just about feeling good about it going in, it's about winning at the other end so we can be successful. And 2/3, as we know, is awfully difficult with an electorate that we have no idea what it's going to look like because things are changing so quickly. But I look forward to continuing to work on that. And again, Henry and all of the staff, Mark, you guys have just done a fabulous job turning around not only what we're doing, but the perception of what we're doing, which is even more difficult. And I think we just need to continue moving in that direction.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Director Cerna.
Thank you, Chair. First, I too would like to thank staff, especially Henry and of course Doug, for all that went into today's presentation. I also want to thank members of the public that have been here now for a few hours. This is not our normal meeting time, and we know that you have jobs, you have schools, schoolwork that you're probably missing for some of you. And it means, I think, a great deal to this entire board that you would not only be here during the course of the business day, but stay for the entirety of our workshop. So I appreciate that. I want to thank all the speakers that have provided input thus far, and again, like to extend the hearty welcome to continue to provide us the input. We cannot do what is necessary without the input and support of the public, not just the writing public, but all those that are interested in the future of the system. I do have a couple of questions. First, before I get to them, though, I do want to thank Director Chenier for his explanation of the import of the Golden One Center. I was chair in 2014, and at that time, that was the year that the initiative for the Golden One Center really gained momentum. We realized that we were going to have a new arena in our downtown, and I think it wasn't lost on any of us on the board at that time that was indeed a great opportunity to, as Jay mentioned, really focus on expanding choice ridership. And let's all remember that it's not one or the other. Choice ridership, the expansion of it, is something that I think necessarily needs to remain a focus of this board so that we can enhance service, add routes, hopefully bring frequencies to a point where we'd like them for those that are transit dependent. It's kind of a very symbiotic relationship between choice and dependent riders here in the system. So again, I appreciate the comments by Director Chenier in that regard. Question about the route optimization study. I'm not sure who's best equipped to answer the question, but I'd like to know how will Title VI considerations be a very prominent part of the study exercise?
So there are certainly requirements under Title VI that will include a Title VI analysis of any changes that would take place, any impact on minority and low-income populations will be a mandated part of the process, but of course the right thing to do as well.
Can I humbly express that I think that Title VI should be kind of the floor in terms of how we explore how we're going to, in the course of optimizing our routes, really stay focused on those parts of our communities that are certainly the focus of Title VI, but I think as diverse as we are in this community, and by community I just don't mean the city of Sacramento, but all the cities in the unincorporated county that we serve, I think it's very important that we not lose sight of the fact that there are folks in disadvantaged communities, whether it be economically disadvantaged, some that have been historically disenfranchised, that I think requires that we not only apply the mandate of Title VI under the Civil Rights Act, but go a little further than that and do a little deeper dive in terms of how in the course of optimizing routes we can better serve those communities. Secondly, is there going to be any effort, Henry, to really ask the question about the value of the regional transit brand? I know that in the course of the presentation on communication and what we've historically done in terms of sponsorships for this event or that event, I'd like to see us really kind of challenge the brand of regional transit in terms of understanding its base value and whether or not this is an opportunity to reassess that.
Okay. Yep. We actually, when Deborah present her portion of that, that's part of the the initiative. What we will definitely look into that.
And then finally, thank you. And then finally, in terms of exploring transit-oriented development opportunities, just wondering, I don't know, Doug, if you're best to respond to this or not, but I'd like to understand whether or not there's any opportunity for joint development, given the maturity of our system or not. And by that I mean looking at some very focused ways we can not just look at how best to get transit stations near higher density housing, but look at very comprehensive projects that include commercial very close to some of our rail stops as well.
Actually, let me just say related to that issue, two things we're doing. One, Director Chenier is going to lead a TOD task group. And secondly, we are actually looking into a couple potential sites for the joint development. One of the major areas is the R Street 13th Street.
Right.
And we get multiple offers, and we feel that offer is not good enough. It will be maybe better for us to work with, together. So I'm going to turn over to, Director.
Yeah, just briefly, what Henry has asked me to do, and we've talked with the chair about this too, is put together kind of a working group of folks fairly diverse that we can look at two things. One, long-term, what do we want to do around TOD with the properties that we do have? But then also because we have a number of our properties who are currently listed for sale, it would be, I think, a sounding ground before, with recommendations coming back to this board of what should we do? And exactly what you said, Director Cerna, is this something we want to sell? Is it something we can develop as a joint use project so that we could have ongoing revenue for it? How does that all work? So those are exactly what's on the table.
Great. Thank you.
Just one other comment is the development community is interested. They've been at the table. Director Chenier had that working group that was together. I met with them a few times, and quite a few of the developers said they need the right project to be able to do this, but in fact they were interested. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Director Hansen.
Thank you. I know people have been very patient today. I want to thank the public for your smiling silence, a lot of you, and collaboration with us on this. The attempts that both Director Chenier and Cerna talked about to improve RT have really taken a collaborative effort. I want to praise our staff. In particular, over the last year and a half, 2 years, there's been a sea change, I think, in how we see the organization, how the organization sees itself. And that is that's born out of the necessity of the public's confidence and trust. And at one point, I likened our organization to a utility, because essentially it is a utility. The people who depend on it the most don't have other choices. But also, a lot of the region doesn't understand the importance of transit, not only for all the good things that we've said here about helping people who don't have other choices or inspiring better land use, but every time people decide to take transit, that relieves congestion on the roads. And while I know that in an ideal world, we would be a far less car-dependent society, the truth is that we are still, as a region, culturally car-oriented. And the Transportation Authority did a study of the psychographics, the views of ourselves towards transit and driving, and it was clear we have a lot of work to do in convincing the region not only of the value of transit, but also why it is germane to their lives, even though they may not use it. So some of the comments about the Green Line, some of the comments about the desirability of not having transit in your neighborhood because you want to keep people out, I think reflect on a mentality that says transit's only for other people, while not understanding and embracing why transit for our region is economically important, why it helps our roads, and why it's a necessity to advance our values. So a healthy transit system that is robust and serves everyone, I think, as we look at our strategic plan, has to be sort of the bedrock of it. But it also has to be financially viable. That's the replacement costs we continue to, and I think Mark Lonergan and Henry made this point very clearly. We built out a system, but we didn't pay for the system we built out. We sort of did it fronting the capital costs through a variety of strategies, but the operations and maintenance costs have never been truly addressed. And that's why we're at the end of the useful life of our light rail vehicles, but don't have the resources to replace them. This is not uncommon in government. At one point, right before I got elected, the city did a survey of our sewers and found out that our replacement schedule for sewers was once every 650 years based on the amount of money they're raising. But the useful life of a sewer pipe is roughly 100 years. And so that was true for our water system, and has been true for lots of things. I think so as we right-size systems, as we try to figure out how to invest so that they're sustainable, so not only the generation now or that had it before has it, but how do we set up a system that's sustainable for the next generation and the next generation? That takes a lot of discipline. I think it takes the discipline of fares that are appropriate but not too much. That ability to pay is still important, and while I have a lot of empathy for students and for seniors, I don't want to just have a carte blanche policy that regardless of your ability to pay, you get it for free. Because some people who don't have an ability to pay should have access to a system that enables them to work and get around. But those who have an ability to pay should join in the rest of society, in our community, and doing their part. And I think that's the same conversation we've had around veterans and other things. This system can't sustain itself if people don't help contribute towards it. I think back to this issue about the how much we should ask for from the public from a tax measure standpoint. From a vision and an aspiration, the best run systems get 1 full cent. I don't think we should say that that's something we're not going to aspire to, while we logistically also understand that the 2/3 threshold in our region means that people who are car dependent don't want to invest in transit because they don't yet understand the connection to their lives. That doesn't mean I think that we should go to what we settled for in Measure B. Measure B was the reflection of a compromise through STA, and I fought to try to get us to 50% because I thought that was a fair place to start. And I still think that we should fight as an organization, especially now that we're back on our feet. When Measure B came forward, RT was weak. We didn't have the ability to fight for ourselves, and I don't think we had the ability to tell the public and show them what our value is. Now we do, because RT is much stronger. It's positioned to grow and do it well, and I think we should start off from a fair split, which is a 50-50 split in my mind. And we also need to think about, as we talk about these properties and everything else, the intersection of good planning. So that's not only transit-oriented development, it's the first and last mile carrier issue, whether that's bike share or car sharing, or I know that we've worked with the transportation network companies. How do we use the backbone of our system to better enfranchise our people to go car-free, or as I like to say, carefree? So that they can take the costs that would otherwise be borne by them for maintenance, gas, insurance, parking, and put those back into their own wallet through a smarter transportation system that can save them money. When we do talk about property disposition, I am worried that some of the people who are trying to buy properties are disconnected from the actual local land use needs. Some of the surplus properties I know, people have unrealistic goals around what they think could happen there. And I'm not talking about the TOD piece, but as we move forward, I think we need to be clear with people who are buying these properties. They have to work with the local jurisdiction to make sure that the uses are appropriate. It's a very, very important thing. As we looked at the map, that's the build out, that's the infrastructure costs. I think one of the things that we have to look at too is the connectivity of that network to other overlaying networks, not just high-speed rail, but also intercity rail. And for instance, we need to revisit that South Line conversation because I think Elk Grove has been doing a lot of great planning around their transit center. And right now our Blue Line doesn't connect to intercity rail through the San Joaquin corridor in the south. That would be, just like the rail yards, a great intermodal hub. And as things move forward in communities like Elk Grove, I think RT needs to better sync up with those efforts, because riders who transfer from the San Joaquin corridor could really also help boost Blue Line ridership. We didn't talk about it today as much, but I also think that the Connect card and the ability to use our newer fare vending machines to take credit, or Apple Pay, or whatever is the latest payment technology, is really important to getting people to purchase, especially for light rail, where it's an open system. We have to lower the barriers in our strategic plan to helping people pay, because right now a lot of people say there's too long a line at the vending machine, it only takes cash or it's broken. And the easier we make it to actually purchase a ticket, the more people that will comply. And I think a lot of our previous fare evasion wasn't just people who were trying to game the system. It's also people who want to pay that were deprived of the ability to pay because the systems were broken. And it's also people who felt like, why should they pay when other people are riding for free and not having to conform to the rules? And I think modeling that good behavior will go a long way at rebuilding some of the confidence. And just the last thing I would say, I'm happy to also serve on that ad hoc with Councilmember Schneer, Director Schneer. But I think our bike ped networks, whether it's in Rancho Cordova and Elk Grove and any of the other cities, including the city of Sacramento, are extremely important things to overlay with our transit system, because some of that system will directly benefit us and its smart planning. The Golden One Center is a great example of smart planning. The old arena did not have any bike or walking access. It was not on a transit line. It was not served. The fact that now we have tens of thousands of people over the course of our experience so far opting for transit rather than driving shows that investments at the heart of our transit network that allow people to have a choice, they will take that choice if the choice provides them with value, convenience, and is clean and safe. And I think that that's the value that Golden One has given us. And I know that people will disagree about whether the city should have invested in that or not. That ship has sailed. It has happened, and now it needs to be successful. And RT as an organization can truly benefit from the new look that people are taking in transit. That doesn't mean we're de-emphasizing other investments. It doesn't mean that we don't want a system that serves everyone. I think a good, robust transit system for Sacramento County and beyond should use those previous investments to leverage everybody up.
All right, thanks, Steve. Director Hume.
Well, it's a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best here, hopefully in less amount of time. First of all, thank you to everyone that came out and spent this morning with us, and I agree with the comment that was made that perhaps every so often we ought to have a change up in our meeting time so that maybe we can engage more people that can't make the evening meetings, even though it may be tougher on our schedules. And I especially want to thank Henry for the staff that you've either reimagined, reinvigorated, or brought on board that are jumping in head first, I think, in trying to re-envision what RT does. And I especially appreciate the blank slate approach to this of shaking up that Etch-a-Sketch and not looking at doing what we're doing better, but doing what we do better. And that's a subtle distinction, but it is a distinction that I think is important. And I'm going to disagree a little bit with Councilmember Hanson that although the educational component and convincing people the value of riding transit and some of the things that were pointed out that Doug mentioned with the statistics of the economic driver of it are important, I think to every dollar we spend bringing transit to people who don't want it and won't use it is a waste of resources that could have been spent enhancing the service to those who need it and do want it. And so I think that that's something to look at is how do we maximize that, because I can tell you that I doubt that running a bus 15 minutes on Fair Oaks Boulevard does anything to the property value of the people who are maybe only annoyed when they have to get behind it. I know, but I'm just saying that when you look at building a robust system, I would rather make sure that those dollars are spent making it robust where it's doing the most amount of usefulness. But then I want to get back to something that Director Cerna brought up with respect to the RT brand. And this is something that I think we looked at several years ago but never actively pursued. And it's something that as we really change the image of RT, and I want to say that to even if they're taken back later, to have someone come and compliment what we've been doing, there's been many years where I don't think we had a single person ever come and compliment what R2 is doing, or had a single article in the newspaper, or a single expose on TV positive about RT. And now we're starting to see those things happen at least a little bit. And if you can take our greatest detractor on the opposing side of the Measure B effort and now have them on board where they see the value in what's being changed, that's what's going to make the next effort more successful. But to Director Cerna's point, and I don't want to take what he said and go in a different direction with it, but I think we need to look at literally our brand as far as, does Sacramento Regional Transit convey the right message? Does light rail convey the right message? You know, if you look at San Diego, their cars are called the trolley, and it's a very different mindset as to opposed to kind of a clunky, functional name versus something, even BART, you know, rolls off the tongue a little easier. So I would look at literally changing our brand as we go forward in this and provide something that maybe isn't so much a descriptor as it is you know, something that imagines or invokes a different visceral feeling about things. But generally, I think we're moving in the right direction. How do we right size it? How do we fund it from an operational standpoint as opposed just a capital standpoint? You know, these are things that are going to be critical. And as Mr. Corliss kind of led off the discussion this morning, I think tougher times might be ahead. And so it's good that we're bracing for that, and we are trying to figure out how to get by with less and identify new revenue streams because it might get darker before the dawn.
Thanks, Pat. Director Harris.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I would also like to thank staff, our new members and old ones, because I think you've been listening to the board and listening to the community both in developing this vision. You know, as I looked at this presentation, it's very clear to me that without more public investment in our transit system, we'll never achieve our goals, which is really sustainability, but reaching a tipping point where we have enough service that people are drawn to use it, and that conversely supports the system that it pays for itself. You have to get to that tipping point. That always requires investment. And as Henry said, we've created a series, a bones system, if you will, for RT that's successful so far, but I personally don't think we've reached that tipping point yet. So as we move forward, clearly all of these goals, even just you know, state of good repair, are not going to be resolved unless we get more public investment. So the next time you vote for a tax measure, understand exactly what you're voting for. Not only keeping RT where it is now, but really envisioning the future of sustainability and a state of good repair, but also more functionality by adding more service. A couple of things that we've talked about. The route optimization study is really key. And I agree with Director Chenier in all of his comments, but the route optimization study, as Director Cerna pointed out, has to have an equity piece. But we really do need to look at it and make sure that we are serving people, because needs have really changed, and they're also going to change in the next few years as autonomous vehicles come on board. And they are coming, and they're going to come with a ferocity that I think will take people by surprise. You know, I've ridden other transit systems. I recently got back from St. Louis and rode their light rail system fairly extensively. Been to Portland, other cities as well. And every city that has a truly functional and well-embraced system has a train line or a robust way to get to an airport. And we don't have that. I rode RT from the airport in St. Louis downtown. Now, how did they pay for it? Their tax rate is currently 10%. Now, why would people accept a 10% tax rate? Well, their city was very degenerated, and with that money and leveraging historic tax credits, they were able to build their transit system, but more or less rebuild their entire city. My point is, you get what you pay for. As Henry pointed out, we've invested very little in our transit system when you look at public funding. A third of a penny is minuscule compared to other municipalities that have the kind of transit system that we want to embrace. And we're not going to get there without that kind of investment. Certainly moving forward, I would love to go to all electric buses. Again, if we have the money to invest, I think that's a great way to go. I drive an electric car, and I really believe in that technology, and it is coming along quite quickly. So I would like to see that as one of our goals moving forward. The last thing I'd like to talk about is transit-oriented development. So I would like to be a part of that conversation as well. There are several opportunities in my district in the city at 65th Street and 59th Street where transit-oriented development could be a big player in bringing new riders to the system and changing the paradigm about living close to transit and making that part of your lifestyle. There are very significant opportunities that we can capitalize on in that regard, and I think that partnering with developers is really essential to achieving that vision. You know, as far as choice riders go, they are essential. If we're going to subsidize fares for certain groups of people, we have to have people who pay full fare. It's just simply the way it must be. So every effort that we make to acquire new ridership and encourage it actually helps us to subsidize those who have a greater need, and we really have to keep our eye on that. The last thing I'd like to say, and I forgot to do this earlier, when I looked at the systems that have really robust light rail components to their transit system, they have low-floor vehicles, and I can't state this highly enough. It would make a huge change to RT is as we acquired new rolling stock, that we use the low-floor model because it's so much more accessible. And if you look at our stations, the ramping and stuff creates numerous problems. I don't have to say them all now, but if we could get rid of those loading ramps and use low-floor vehicles, we will be ahead of the game. So as we look at our vision going forward, I think that that is also a very important piece. So the bottom line is sustainability, and you only get there if you pay for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Director Natoli?
Thank you, Chair Moran. I'm going to be pretty brief this morning, but I first would ditto the comments to compliment our leadership, certainly Regional Transit District, certainly Henry, you and your team. I think the community engagement that's happened thus far certainly has been very helpful, and I know was part of the backbone of your presentation this morning. And I would just note that I think what comes out of this for me is that in having a vision, certainly looking at innovation and how we're going to go about improving and growing the system, I think that part of the challenge that we always face, and it's been said here many times, but you know, while we look to the future, we're living in the here and now. And part of that here and now is the realities of what you have to do every day to make sure that the buses that you do have are in good repair, that the trains you do have are in good repair, that you have the operations and the training and all the components that go into making it work every day. And again, you can get stuck on that in a way that you don't look to how you then grow and improve and grow your ridership and grow your service. But I guess I would take from this presentation this morning, I think the challenge, certainly a lot of it based in financial, but nonetheless, the challenge has been for some time is to how do we grow a system and adjust it in a way, and I think the route optimization study and looking at you know, where people want to go, how they get there now, and how you help them get to those places in the future are all important, and I think that focus will be really helpful to this board and certainly to the district. But having been on this board through the service cuts and some of the restorations, and certainly many of our staff members have had to live both of those particular elements in the history of this district, I think we need to, again, not only be prudent with our money, but also have that vision, but recognize that we have a system right now that for all its pluses certainly has, as pointed out, many challenges ahead of us, and whether it's retooling, replacing, repairing, and I think some of the strategies presented this morning are clearly ones that will help guide us in that. I am concerned, and I would echo some of the other comments here, that the preventative maintenance money that the district has operated on, that hasn't gone into a system that at times was relatively new, going back to 1987, and then even to the purchase of the CAF cars 14 years ago. Now we're at a point where major components will require major investment, and I'm concerned that as we look to go out to certainly to voters, but to the community, we keep that in focus, because I could see if it were truly $35 million in annual reduction that were to come down, either all at once or over a period of time, that could significantly shift not only what we would promise to folks, but what we would say what we're going to do with the money, because it would change the focus, not that you wouldn't have money to reinvest in fixing things and growing the system. And so I think we need to be really cognizant of that over the next 18 months, that may not play itself out, but that over time, if we were going to be more dependent upon ourselves to fund those things, and we know we have this tremendous backlog, and we still want to grow and improve and grow our ridership and improve our service capability, I think we need to be really clear as we talk to folks about that, because otherwise it could be looked upon with no ill intent, but that somehow, well, you told us one thing, just like government always does, and guess what? You didn't deliver on that, and it wasn't intentional, but things will shift, and we see that potentially right now. So I guess what I would just maybe end with this morning, again, certainly I think there's a lot of work to do. I think the outreach that was done to get to today and going forward is going to be very helpful. And again, decisions that this district and its board and certainly staff and the community make about how we want to invest and how we want to reinvest. But whatever we do, that we do it well. And I think that, Henry, the message here is that we've certainly improved upon what we have as our assets, and you have the human investment in that, you have the community investment, the leadership of my colleagues on this board, and certainly the broader community, the many, many partners that we have. And so I think, again, if we stay focused on that, the future will be bright, and we can certainly have a vision. It may be a little less than what we like to do, a little less resource-driven, but nonetheless be something we can all be proud of. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. Director Budge?
This really has been a very productive morning. Lots of excellent information, more like a kind of a state of RT, which is really important for all of us to hear, not only the people who are here today, but all the board members, whether we've been here a while or are new. This is a good time to do this. I'd like to start by echoing the comments about choice riders. I witness this every time we get on the train to come down to a Kings game, because you all know we're season ticket holders. And unfortunately, I don't find the new ticket machine any more or any less complicated than the old ticket machine. But yes, Steve, I buy mine on my phone. And that is really slick. And there's always somebody there that you need to explain to them how to get the app or how to use the machine or whatever. Eliminating those barriers is really important. But it's all those people who would not otherwise be riding the train. And so when all of a sudden you've got an early morning meeting downtown and the TV says there's 1 million people on the freeway, well, maybe you'll think about taking the train instead of sitting there for an hour and a half in your automobile. For Rancho Cordova, it's fair to say that the route optimization study is really critical to us, because whether it's Rancho Cordova or North Natomas, we all have and have had for quite some time so many growth areas coming online that are simply not served right now. The very first community meeting I went to in the Anatolia Clubhouse back in 2005, and somebody wanted to know when they were going to get shuttle bus service up to the Sunrise Station. Fortunately now, we're able to run our Cordovan, but like you said, it has limited funding. We've managed to run 2 lines. We have a huge need for a daytime shopper, as they are doing in North Natomas, but there's not really a source of funding to provide that kind of service. And we just in December approved Rio de Oro with another 32,000 houses, 32,000 plus high school, middle school, and library, and a very large work component because of the flight path for Mather. So, and actually that's an area, the entire area that encompasses Rio de Oro can be fit into downtown Sacramento. That's how big an area it is. And at this point in time, we have 2.5 bus routes in Rancho Cordova. So route optimization is incredibly important. It's really the only way we're ever going to provide new growth. But I also appreciate the comment that somebody made about providing budget information to go along with potential changes, because from my perspective, it's wonderful to acknowledge that we need some more financial help from the taxpayers in the county or in the regional transit service area, but it's really difficult to just put all our eggs in one basket. And route optimization has the ability to save money, as Laura so graciously pointed out. And it's a little bit like what we went through with Blueprint, where with modeling, you make a change over here and you see what it does to the budget over here. Route restructuring in regional transit always has winners and losers. It's been that way in every route restructuring exercise that this organization has ever been through, going back to the 80s. And that's unfortunate, but sometimes we do need to figure out where people really need to go and where they're coming from and make it possible to move the majority of the people to take advantage of the system. And just on two details, those of us who are privileged to drive electric vehicles, I think the concept of having electric buses is just wonderful, and it's not just the current price of electricity, but it also has to do with the maintenance and the lack of moving parts. There's not that much stuff that goes wrong with them. And transit-oriented development. Rancho Cordova has two of the largest TOD opportunities along along the light rail system. And there have been proposals in the past that couldn't go anywhere because of the economy, but we definitely want to participate in this discussion. We actually, at this point in time, as RT staff knows and Dawn knows, Mill Station is under redevelopment. The ground floor is finally really going to be something after almost 20 years. And this, between that and Folsom Lake College across the street, it's a really good opportunity to see what effect having appropriate development around a train station can have on the ridership of that particular, that gets on and off at that particular train station. So we're kind of a test case right now, and we have high hopes, and we'd like to be a part of the discussion.
Thanks, Linda. Other director comments? Steve?
Yeah, I'll be really brief. And again, thanks for the presentation, and I really appreciate the board and public comments today. I have one little seed I want to plant, and I think it went to part of the defeat of the Measure B. And we all know that roads and transit and everything is all under the transportation umbrella, but I really think we should concentrate on a transit-only measure. And if we do so, now we're talking about 1/6 of a cent that comes from Measure A. Give that back to roads and bridges and talk about what we want to do, whether it's 1/3 of a cent or 1/2 a cent or whatever on a sales tax. But we can tell our story as transit and not muddy the waters with roads. And obviously our infrastructure needs improvement all around, but I thought that was an idea to think about and talk about a transit-only measure where we can tell our story. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Any other director comments? I'll just finish up. A lot of great stuff has been said here, and I suppose my message is, and I think everybody feels this, there's a lot of positive energy, a positive momentum in improving, enhancing, and adding to service. And we're just all interested in parlaying that momentum. And I know staff has been excellent at trying to, through this plan to seize that opportunity. And it's obviously of highest interest here at the board. All sorts of logistics go into that. And we talked about future funding and all those sorts of things. But, these are kind of the best of times and potentially some really bad times, depending on how some of this budgetary stuff plays out. But I just need the community to understand and know that this board is energized as much as it has ever been. I know the staff is as well. So we just look forward to using whatever tools are at our disposal. Hopefully all our funding stuff works out well. And boy, 5 years from now, this can really look different and in a much better way. So I'll conclude there. Any final staff comment, Henry, or we're about a little over the published time here, but anything to add before we adjourn?
I just want to thank the board leadership and thank the extraordinary support from the entire community. Lots of people coming here today to show their support. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned. We'll take that applause and we will earn that applause, okay?